on now. All right, I think it's going, so we're good. All right, so nobody's watching right now, which is great. So we can just start this off talking about monkeys. So Trey,
Yeah,
you've been looking at picking up a capuchin. Is that
that
what it
would,
is?
yeah, yeah. I want a capuchin pretty bad.
All
Be a
right, let me
pretty
see if I
cool.
can find a picture of a capuchin. Let's just share
Man,
this.
capuchins are so cute.
Okay, let's look at the capuchin. All right, capuchin.
Do you have the one I sent you, or are you like looking
The
for?
one with diapers? No, I don't. That's one that Lily has, so I don't have that one. But
Oh, okay.
here's a capuchin. This could be Trey's next companion in life, right here. This is it. Okay. All right.
Gonna pull up a meme.
Not even a meme. Okay. Okay, hold on. Where is the okay, yeah, here it is. Okay. And I think this is it. And we're gonna do this. And let's share. All right, guys, this is the most important thing you're gonna see today.
Imagine
that's
tuning in like right there.
that's all that matters is right there. That's Trey's best friend. That's what's coming up next. All right, so
Can't
in
wait.
Trey's life. All right, it looks like we actually have two people watching now, so we're gonna actually just present this as I speak for a little bit.
Oh man.
And but Trey is actually thinking about buying this little guy, this very one. He looks kind of
Not
pissed off right
not
now.
that one.
Okay, so anyway, Trey's been exploring and experiencing a lot of stuff as far as the spiritual aspect goes. Trey, do you want to enlighten our viewers on that
Oh, like what
aspect?
happened on the first, for example?
Yeah. So the first, this has a lot to do with Enneagram. In this, Enneagram is like the new cocaine. So people have not actually been really involved in it. You should, because it is like doing a little bit of it's like mixing Red Bull sugar free with cocaine. So mix
Yeah,
it up, do a little swirl,
that's a pretty good description.
yeah, and then knock it out. So here we go, Trey. Share your experience on the first. Let
Yeah, okay.
everybody know what
So
happened.
here I am. I'm like, I kind of want to go to India. I was doing some research. I was like thinking about stuff, and I said I want to go to India. So I thought, well, if I'm going to go to India, then I need to talk to my parents about it. I need to like let them know, which like some of my family have never really been close to. Um,
Hold on, let's
so
pause real quick. Trey, why did you want to go to India? Let's get that backstory first too.
man. So it was the idea that there would be much less, right? Like here in the States, you're like, it's almost like you're forced to try to survive, and everyone's trying to like just keep their stuff together. And in other countries, it's actually a lot easier to live. And so you don't have as many struggles and you don't have as many things going on. Social media isn't a big deal. Like there's just a lot of like, it's just much calmer in that kind of way. So I know India is not like calm. When you think of India, it's not like the most calm thing that comes to mind, but it's just less to worry about, less things going on. So that's the reasoning behind it. It's more like personal growth. Like I can move to an environment where there's not as much things that can pull my attention and things that can stress me out, et cetera, et cetera. Um, so that was the idea. And also there's like a lot of like masters and gurus there that you can like you can find. So it seemed like a great opportunity. I was considering it. So I thought, well, if that's the case, I need to talk to my family about it. There's a lot of my family that I don't really talk to. Um, but I decided to now, just because this is like a big deal, if I did decide to do it. So I went to my dad's first, and this was like January 1st. I woke up, it was a regular morning, sat down to eat breakfast, and I had these like series of realizations, and I started sharing them with my sister. And they were basically just things that like I was being creative. I was saying, well, what if this and what if that and what if that and what if this about life? And I went so far into these what ifs that I realized that I don't know anything. And for a little bit, I just dropped these beliefs that I had previously had because I just saw the expansiveness of like what we don't know. You know, like we have no idea what our reality is. And so at that point, I had let go of that. And then a few minutes later, everything I looked at, every person I looked at, looked as though it was myself looking back at me. I couldn't differentiate between myself and other people in the environment. There was no difference. So it was I felt infinite. I felt huge. I felt like every living being on this planet was myself. There was a period of time um, where I was looking at the TV and it started to trip me out because I saw a football team and it looked as though all of them were myself. I can't describe it. It's not something I can like. It's really difficult to describe, but I wasn't on drugs. It's like the first question people ask me, like, were you on drugs? Like, no, I was completely sober. Um, just woke up that morning. It was like a normal thing going on. So it really opened my mind. And actually, what's crazy is I've had this like 12-year like conflict with my mom, and having had that experience gave me exactly like what I needed the following week when I went to go visit her to solve this conflict completely. And so it's completely dissolved and I no longer have it on my mind. Um, it allowed me to walk myself through the process where I said, okay, I know I'm not experiencing it now, but if we are the same person, if I am her and she is me, then from her perspective, what would I do to myself? And I thought, well, I would love and appreciate myself. So why is it that from this end I feel rejection? And I asked myself, okay, well, maybe it's because I don't have the beliefs, et cetera, that she has. So I asked myself, okay, if I am her, if I believe what she believes, if I have the opinions and ideals, et cetera, that she does, and I'll look at myself again and ask, how do I go about loving this individual? The way that I decided that I should go about loving myself was the way that she had been doing my whole life. And I couldn't recognize it because I was so stuck to myself and I was seeing things from my own perspective. So for a little bit, I had this empathy, and I couldn't have had recognized that if I hadn't have had the experience that I did on the first. So um, that was like what really got me into everything else. Like I had sort of studied everything, but it wasn't like I didn't really believe it all or like really know what I believed. And then when I had the experience, it kind of like confirmed it for me. And I was like, okay, this is real. At least to me, it's real, right? So I'm the one that had the experience. So I said, okay, this is real to me. So I started, using that and studying more and more and realizing how much I really don't know.
So at the end of the story, you wound up not knowing what you thought you knew.
Right.
Yeah.
Something
So
like that.
it's always good to get dumber. That's something, that's something that we've learned. And I was questioning myself, which is very common for me now these days, is that as I was thinking to myself earlier, I was like, wow, as I've gotten older, life gotten harder. It gets harder and harder because you realize how much you don't know. When you're young, you think you got it all. You use that little shoulder shrug, like this is easy. And then you realize how stupid you really are. And I've hit several of those. And actually, several is an understatement. It's like every day you're recognizing that you're not what you thought you were. And it's a good thing, but it's also a very painful thing. And I'll tell you, this shit does not get easy. I mean, the more you're starting to see linear that say, okay, this is another leveling you over and over again. And this is where the frustration begins for a lot of people. Trust me, I experience this all the time. It's not enjoyable at all. It's knowing how stupid you really are. So our message is that the dumber you are, the better off you are.
That's why we started with a monkey.
Yeah, the monkey is the most important thing. And again, we're going to go back and really take a look at the future mascot of what we're doing here. So brief moment, and let's go ahead and present.
Man, he's so cute.
Yeah, so that is the goal, is to get to that point where you're living and it's flowing through you.
Yeah,
just like this monkey. So
we're all you're thinking about.
What's actually interesting though is the monkey lives up. It is the animal of type 7, and a monkey is associated with type 7.
Better explain yourself. People are about to get offended.
Yeah. So before I really dive into that, I want to start off by saying when it comes to typology. I think needs to be addressed. Trey addressed this in my other video. He was talking about typology being a stepping stone to a greater world or a different world for him. And I've had mixed feelings on typology for a while. Hence the part of the slowdown in the video production is there are perks to really understanding psychology, really understanding how people operate. There is also the side of discrimination, which is very vast in the community. It surprises me that a community that is so all interested in the same thing can be so against each other. Just because you don't have a certain letter, it's like you get shunned, you know. I can't even take it seriously. And they're like, you know, these groups are for these people only. It's like separate but equal clause. I mean, what are we, back in the 50s? Like, it just doesn't make any sense. And I'm just like, okay, we're supposed to be getting to understand each other more, but now we have reasons to just diversify and move each other further away.
Yeah.
And so I've really kind of moved a lot out of typology in a lot of ways, but I still like to study it, especially the psychology aspect of how people actually operate. But I don't label people. I don't meet people and think of what their type is unless it's something I'm studying right that minute. And then I put it down and I'm like, oh, it's kind of fresh on my mind. But after that, it kind of just goes away. And, you know, I don't think about type very often. Type is something that I think it really helps for coworkers and things like that, seeing maybe that you can communicate better. But once you get to a certain standpoint, I think there's a point where you get too deep. It's like you start getting so deep into it that all you see with your friends is just letters. Like you look at them and they're talking and their mouth is moving, and you just
but you're just seeing NE.
Yeah, you're seeing NE and TI and FE and ENFP, and the next thing you know is that your friends are like, "Hey, hello, are you listening?" And you're like, "Yes, of course. I use TE. Of course, I was listening." You're like, "What are you talking about?" So
like, what do you see? Let me get a piece of paper.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's what makes it funny for me, because you start seeing those things and you're just like, man. And then the new people, all the new YouTubers that are coming out with MBTI channels, like they're spreading in abundance now. There's all now, because every other name has been taken. They're like YouTuber INFJ 2, YouTuber INFJ 3.
Man,
they start adding numbers. When the numbers are coming, you're like, okay, this is getting a little too crazy now, because
it's going to get to the. Sorry,
go ahead, Trey. Go ahead.
I was going to say it's going to get to the point where, like, you know, your entire MBTI, Enneagram, Socionics, etc. description is going to be your new YouTube channel name, and then we're going to start running out. You're like, oh crap, the INFJ 5 wing 4 512, etc. was taken. I got to put version 2 at the end of it.
Yeah, you know, and it's crazy because I was looking at there's new personality systems being released every day. More accurate, more better, and then ultimately more accurate, more better is going to be more discriminatory.
Right.
You know, I was looking at someone's channel.
More
I don't know. I was looking at someone's channel not too long ago, and this guy, he posted this video, and he goes, there's INFJs and they're phonies, and this is hurtful and harmful to the MBTI community. And I was like, phonies are harmful to whom? To whom are phonies harmful? Like, okay, I'll slap a label on me right now, FUCK. is that really so harmful if I identify with being a frextrovert? I mean, come on.
What?
A frextrovert. It's an
Not
FU.
even ask.
Yeah, don't even ask. The point is that I think it's just crazy that we're getting to this point where, I mean, people are trying to get a platform and it's becoming so saturated that they're literally creating channels just to knock down other channels. And so that way they're like, oh, I want to steal your subscribers. It's becoming very competitive instead of this, which I guess I'm just a little too idealistic. I thought people would come together and be like, hey, look, we're all in MBTI. We all can, you know, share ideas and thoughts.
Yeah,
and
definitely.
But it's strange because there's actually no proof to MBTI. There's a lot of research, but there's no actual proof that makes it's even real. But everybody comes out with a new video and says, now listen, I have the way. My way is the right way. You can't. What that YouTuber said, the one was INFJ3 instead of INFJ8. INFJ3 is actually wrong.
Whoa. Maybe he is wrong though.
So this is what's really happening is that you start seeing this wrongness, and people are they're actually boosting their platforms and their channels by who's wrong, and it's just making me laugh because that's now the standpoint. Instead of teaching, it's not coming from a point of teaching anymore. It is like
bringing us all together.
Yeah, it's like that one YouTuber Trey 4L, he said he was ENTJ,
not that guy,
and then he said he was INFJ. And now he doesn't have any credibility to talk about anything ever again because he said he was an I and an E and whatever else. And it's getting to the point where we're starting to lose really focus on why we study this crap in the first place. And I'm just like, okay, you guys are getting out.
I mean, how can we really say that I lost credibility doing that? Like, what is credibility? How does one be credible in their information? How do I establish that what you're saying is truth? We don't really know.
Trey, you're going to get too metaphysical on these.
I'm sorry.
I mean, if we start talking about what is actual truth, now you're getting into deep philosophy discussions on what could be true and what couldn't. I mean, this gets.
I realized it, and I was slowing down. I was like, maybe I shouldn't do.
You're like, what is truth after all? Oh man, yeah,
that was exactly where I was headed.
We could go down that road, but it probably won't be very good for the viewers. Like, I'll see this viewer count start decreasing. They're like,
I would leave.
Yeah, like you just don't even like to listen to yourself. You're like, you know what, sign off. But the whole thing is that we started this originally MBTV. We started it with the concept of being able to teach things and give people an opportunity to learn what we've learned without having to go through all the books and all the research. That way you guys can actually like pick and choose what you believe and what you don't believe and hopefully get something out of it. There was a period where I thought I had the answers because the creators or the people who run MBTI push these answers out into the marketplace and they say this is how it is. But just because a group of bald old people say that that's how it is doesn't necessarily mean that's actually how it is.
Carl Jung.
Yeah, so we don't know how it actually is because there's no actual proof. I mean, so some people, like I've went through so many personality systems now that one version of Socionics will say I'm one type, another version of Socionics will say I'm another type, another version of MBTI will say I'm this type, and then version of this will say I'm this, and then all these other things, right? And it's like, how many labels do you need to slap on yourself before you dump them all? Which is the point. Is just dump the labels. That's what we're trying to do. When you learn your ENTJ or you learn whatever your INFJ, the goal is to figure out where you're strong at and pursue those things effectively, but also figure out where you're weak at so you can actually improve those and become a more balanced person overall. It's not about just identifying with a label and justifying why you can't do things. And I recently went through the 21 laws or 21 irrefutable laws of leadership by Maxwell. And I went through those again for the second round, and I tested myself on where my leadership was weak. And sure enough, the type helped identify where my problem was. My weakest leadership trait was law of connection. I have a really difficult time actually keeping in touch with people. I'm pretty bad at it. So it's kind of typical with people who are heavy work focused or heavy introverted or whatever. So for me, it's like my mind is on my job, my work, and those type of things. And keeping in touch has been something I've never been good at, and it shows. So the point is, the type helped me identify that, but also I could just read that book and know nothing about type and still would have known that. So that's what we're trying to get to, and I'm just amazed at kind of how we've, as a community, have lost sight of that. And it's there's so much more beyond type, and that's where I really want to move the rest of this conversation is once you know your type, the next question that we ask is what now? So most type enthusiasts go, okay, I've figured out MBTI. Now it's time to move to astrology or tarot cards or demonology or whatever else, gremlin psychology or whatever else you want to come up with to slap another label on yourself. I see those people's profiles that say like ENTJ, MSTX, DXXP to do like 362445672, big 57 introvert, IE. I'm just like, why do you need that? Like, it's like you're so Enneagram 4, you just want to be so unique. You just slap like 30 different labels on yourself just so you can know. At some point you get so unique that you're the only person on the earth who is that exact combination of shit on your profile.
Mission accomplished. What now?
Now what? Now that you're so special, what do you do? There's no, so now you're so special, there's no type system anymore that can help you because you're so special. These were made for the masses. So now what, right? Now what do you do?
I think it's important. I think the main thing that typology is really good for is just knowing how other people are thinking about things. Like, like for example, like, for Socionics, when I'm talking about something or when I have an idea, I'm looking at certain kinds of information in my environment, and that's what's forming my ideas. So if I'm looking at certain types of information and someone else is looking at certain types of information and we make a statement based off of both our ideas, it's going to sound contradictory, but we're not even talking about the same things. So I think it's helpful in typology to know how these different systems like paint these other pictures, like paint what people are thinking, like what's going on in these people's minds, and then you can understand where they're coming from. Or typology is just a step, at least in my opinion, it's just a step towards understanding that there's different ways of thinking and there's different people in the world. And so when you hear someone else say something that does not make any sense to you, that does not mean that it's wrong. Even if you know for a fact that it's right from your perspective, like that does not mean just because you're 100%, 138% sure that what you know to be truth is truth, does not make, them wrong or you right necessarily.
So yeah, that's what I mean. It's like once you start realizing how much is outside of yourself, because I think the main problem that we have is that once we figure out our type, whatever system we're using, we start using that as a crux. Like that is the stereotype that we use. So let's say that in the beginning you identified with INFJ for whatever reason, and you have this particular fixation on INFJ. So now you automatically know how NI and FE and TI and SE all work because you're INFJ. So now you think you know what NI is because you're basing it off your own experience, and then you start creating all these videos or these
this is all what I did, except it was ENTJ, not INFJ.
Yeah, so you start creating all these things from your own perspective, and the whole time you're not actually talking about NI, you're talking about what makes you, your own perspectives. And then you start assigning it to NI because it's your dominant function, and then you come to find out you're actually like an ISFJ. And you're like, damn, that was all SI, and then you have a midlife crisis and you fall apart. So
hopefully.
Yeah, hopefully, you let go of whatever you're attached to, these ideas and concepts, because I'll tell you, the hardest thing that I've been through lately is being in a relationship. That is the hardest thing I've experienced in a long time. I mean, you think you got shit figured out? You really don't. And you think you're all content with life how it is, and you think you got it. Everything is so easy. Then you have this person who knows you so well. And it's really unfortunate that they know you so well, because then they kind of slap you with reality. Like, oh, you studied 26 type systems? Oh, that's great. You're still a moron.
Oh, man.
So, you get faced with that a lot. And that's the beauty of it. And it hurts a lot. And there's a lot of pain. But there's a lot of good side to it, as long as you keep your mind open and you're actually allowing someone else to not actually have this centric point of view. Like I said, if you're an INFJ or you think you're an INFJ, the next thing is you start formulating everything that's based on INFJ. But the reality is that it's not even INFJ in the first place. And the other person's like, dude, you're an idiot. You're not even INFJ. And because they know you so well, they know what you actually are experiencing. They know what you're dealing with. And they're like, how about you just identify with you for once? You're not talking about NI. You're not talking about FE. You're not talking about TI. You're not talking about SE. You're talking about you. And letting go of these types or these attachments. And that's the direction of this channel in the future. This channel is not going to, it will still have psychology. It'll still have type stuff. But I really want it to be a tool so that you can move past it, not that's what it is. Like, oh, you know, this is what makes me me. You know, there's so much that needs to be explored outside of type. I mean, and there's nothing wrong with studying type and being a type enthusiast, as long as you don't start creating a filter that you see everything, all you pull out of the world is type, and here lies INFJ.
That rock looks so NE to me.
Yeah. Or your tombstone, you know, here lies INFJ. Right? Or in fact, for the most people who are the typology enthusiast, INFJ, 6-wing, 6-wing 7, SXXP. SEXP. They screwed up the tombstone. Yeah, I mean, it's just you know, you want to be you at the end of the day, and you is something that I think we're all far removed from, especially in today's society. This is why you need to get a capuchin.
Oh yeah, Capuchin is a revolutionary new product that's existed for a long time, and it's going to show you who you are. So buy now.
Yeah, for only 5 easy payments of $22.95.
Yeah,
You can pick up your own capuchin today. It's shipped. He is insured. If you see a box moving on your porch,
you're going to need to order diapers before he gets there, though.
yeah, you got to have monkey diapers. I think you can pick those up at your local Walmart. But so this is why I've really moved into the direction of Enneagram. Enneagram is a map. It's not actually a typing system, which is really cool. There is a typing component to it, but it's actually a map. And this is why I like Enneagram so much. And then the fact why I'm actually creating Enneagram videos is there's 3 in the making right now. They're ready to be edited and finalized and uploaded. But Enneagram is just a way for us to describe reality, right? It's a way for us to describe what true nature really is. And without getting all fluffy and foofy on you, there is our own perspective. We know that the way that we experience reality, right? We know that we add filters, right? So a person can say a sentence. Trey can say one thing, and 37,000 people watch him say that one thing, and they all get different meanings out of it. Hence, when somebody watches Donald Trump speak, some people are like, that guy's an idiot. And then other people are like, oh my God, he captivated me. And other people are like, he's a racist. So point is, we all have different filters. We all hear and perceive different things. Well, true nature is without the perception distortion, what reality actually is. That's kind of the core of if you want to get a simplistic understanding. A little understated, but that's what Enneagram is. Enneagram is just essentially characteristics to define the same thing. And the typology component is that there is a belief that we are from the same nature, of course, but we all have a different vantage point, ultimately, a different way of looking at the same thing. Although the same experiences happen as a kid. So 9 kids are born of the same family, and their dad beats all of them. But they all have 9 different... Why do I get so graphic?
Most people just say that, you know, they were pulled away during breastfeeding, but like you had to go into like their father beating them. Like, what?
Oh man, woo. Okay. So their dad beats them, and they all have that same beating, right? None of them got hit harder, none of them got hit less. They all got hit the same. 5 beatings for each one, right? And but they all perceive those beatings differently. The Enneagram 1 would be probably questioning why the dad didn't beat him the right way. And okay, but you get my drift, right? They're all going to get a different perspective. They're all going to get a different interpretation of that same event. And that is essentially the individualization of that particular unit of reality. So they're all looking at the same thing. So they're all looking at this can of Red Bull, and one sees the color of the can, the other sees the shape of the can, the other sees the contents of the can, the other sees the can in its wholeness. This is everything the can. It has something inside of it. It has something on the outside. The other person sees how the can could actually be bigger or better once the person sees where the can is heading. And that's kind of the idea, is you've got these people describing the same thing. So when we look at Enneagram, it's essentially a map for our own selves to figure out our egos and understand it enough so we can shed it, not get rid of the ego, but shed it in the sense of stop identifying with it. Just understand it enough. And through understanding alone, you won't probably hit the point of being able to shed it, nor should you even try. You should just attempt to understand it and understand that it's happening and accept and appreciate every moment that manifests from it, but also recognize that it's just not you. And that's the map that the Enneagram provides to us that I don't think a lot of other systems do. MBTI shoves you into a category. Socionics shoves you into a category. Every test you've probably taken in school shoves you in a category. Right when it says Caucasian, Asian, shoves you into a category. So Enneagram, you can be shoved into a category, but ultimately, I think with the Enneagram, you actually are being able to map your own unconscious. You're being able to map reality and figure out how your ego's formed from a specific vantage point and what your coping mechanism is, or several coping mechanisms, depending on how many layers deep you go into the Enneagram. So if you go into Enneagram, you might find the first layer, right? And then you're like, oh, this is it. This is the key. And then you find out there's a whole nother layer built on it or underneath it and underneath it, underneath. And eventually you'll get to that core unique vantage point. And you start having these spiritual moments and you'll start seeing things a little differently. Second comments.
Now I'm looking at capuchin monkeys.
All right. So Trey is doing something that will bring him to the next level of spirituality.
Yeah.
So
wow.
Capuchins are a big part of growing in this world. No, not really. But it says, somebody asked, what is the plan for this channel? I believe I just explained that. So the channel is really just going to cover psychology, typology. My podcast, which I'll probably launch second quarter of this year, so probably April. I will probably do that more in the sense of spirituality, in the sense of politics, in the sense of anything that's on my mind. So I'm going to stop putting personal things on YouTube, and I'm going to keep it just typology centered, psychology centered, and a little bit of like development. But the podcast will probably contain more of like leadership, personal development, growth outside of psychology. I want to keep the podcast away from typology. I may, refer to it, but I kind of want to keep that as a separate mechanism, because I think there's a lot more outside of just psychology. I think psychology is good. Like I said earlier, understanding how people work and understanding organizations, understanding how different things come together inside the person's mind, being able to accommodate when necessary, even flex yourself when necessary. So those type of things I think are beneficial. So I think typology is a good system for that. But I think we've just all have become so over-identified with types that, and then once we find a type, we think we're the gold standard of the type. And you're not this because I'm this. And it's just like, who cares? If you actually had some type of spiritual perspective, you'd probably like, I'm all types and no types at the same time because I'm everyone and no one. I mean, that was a Treyism, just so you know.
Oh, man.
Trey's already getting a headache.
That would be something I would do.
Yeah, so Trey is typeless now. Trey has no type. If he's any type, he's just a capuchin. Him and the capuchin are one. So,
I mean, I still have type.
So Trey, when we, as far as you go, kind of what's been your main focus lately? Where have you been kind of spending your time?
I've been everywhere. I have been all over the place. I don't even know. I have no idea what I want. And I have no idea, even if I did want it, how I would get it. And then I'll start to try to get it, and then I'll realize it's probably not what I want. It's I'm all over the place. I mean I've been learning a lot about, just honestly I've just been trying to tear down my walls. There are things that I have sort of either by habit or by pushing it away, I am restricting myself from a lot of great things in life. Just like, for example, like one thing we could talk about is just like how, like with a type 1, the constant temptation is to, put things in the category of right and wrong. While, I mean, in reality, right and wrong is not that easy to pull out or distinctualize, So like that's one example, just like one thing that a long time ago, not a long time ago, but something that I started to sort of see is that we can't really say that this thing was done wrong or anything like that. And I've been moving into like, just for example, today I've been trying to eat healthier. You know what I mean? I don't pay attention to food. I'll buy a pizza and then that'll be my meal for like the next 2 or 3 days. I'll literally just have a slice or two of pizza for one meal in my day, and that's it. And so I don't really think about food. I don't really work with food, but I'm going to try to start eating like healthier things, et cetera, et cetera. There's just things by habit that I've limited myself to, as well as, just things that in my mind I'm closed off to. Obviously, I know that because when, you have a conversation with somebody, if you ever see yourself disagreeing with them or having like a strong like feeling about whatever they're saying, like a negative feeling or something, there's obviously something that you're not understanding. There's something that's there that you could feel and that you could understand that you're not. And so it limits you to your own subjective spot. So I've been trying to open my mind and trying to find more things that I don't know. I guess give me a better perspective.
So as far as that goes, I'm curious. You say you're trying to work out, like you said, your direction, yourself. What I mean, what is it that you're trying to figure out?
It's not like it's almost like, so when I had the experience on the first thing was, whoa, I gotta study this and I gotta try to become enlightened because like that was like the most amazing thing that's ever happened, right? So then from like then to like the 21st of January, I was just like constantly studying. Like there was a period of time where I literally wake up, study, pass out, wake up, study, pass out, like in a constant cycle. And so then I reached this point where I was extremely frustrated because I found out that I mean, I knew this in the back of my mind, but I was kind of ignoring it. Um, you can't, if you want to be enlightened, you can't have it necessarily because there's someone there who is wanting. And the idea is that you have to remove yourself, right? So I got so frustrated that I was like, all right, I guess I'm just not going to have anything to do. Like, I just, whatever. I'm just going to let it go. I'm just going to like, I guess I'll work on myself. I guess I'll find things that I know I'm not paying attention to. I know that I'm lacking in, that I could be doing better. So I'm just trying to grow. Whatever I can, I'm just trying to grow. I can't force it to happen, and so maybe if I just open up more parts of my life, then I'll ease into it, and maybe not. So that's where I'm at.
So this what Trey is doing is very foreign to me, um, but it's not necessarily bad or good in any way, shape, or form. It's just very foreign to someone who, like myself, has always had goals or something I've wanted to do, and it's very different. And this is where the psychology component does come in. It's like understanding that people are different. Instead of without psychology and without what I've studied, I naturally think this guy's goalless. What the hell? He's a loser, right? I mean, that's like the standpoint that somebody would think. If you're not like me, then you're wrong. So this is where typology has been really beneficial because it's part of that. The other part of it is that a lot of the other personal development stuff I've went through is you really get to kind of understand different people's perspectives. Uh, I think the main thing to judge a person on is not goals or anything like that anymore, but the question of are they happy? So that's where I think you should judge people. If a person is happy, it's not about their career, it's not about their family, it's not about anything else but their happiness. I think that's a fair assessment of character. And if anybody were to look at me, they'd know that I'd fail that test. And it's because there's so many other things that I prioritized throughout my life that I thought were going to create that happiness, but what we fail to realize is that it's actually already there. So that's what you judge a character on, really. I think, and not in a harsh way, but you get to identify if they're actually correct, if their way is beneficial, right? If their way is something that is something you wish to follow. There was a teacher I once had who said, you know, somebody can be super successful financially or in their career, but the real question is, are you happy? And truly, deeply ask yourself, are you happy? And if the answer is not immediate, then you need to think on why it's not immediate and what it is that's holding you back from achieving such a thing. And the more that I've looked into it, I realized that the more that I chase things, the harder it is to attain any level of happiness or anything. And it doesn't mean that I need to give up on those things. It just means that I need to put those things in perspective. And so when you look at happiness as a whole, you realize that, you know, you can pursue everything external, but you'll never find it. It's like a funny little mystery. And then by pursuing it, you will also never find it by pursuing happiness. You know, and they say whatever makes you happy, nothing makes you happy. You're already happy. You just everything else, you're making yourself unhappy is the thing.
By looking for happiness.
Yeah, or by looking for happiness or finding fulfillment in things that are grander than what they need to be, overcomplicating it, right? And overdoing it in a sense. Some people think that money is going to make them happy. Some people think a family is going to make them happy. And some people think, but I'll tell you, the people I've spent the most time with in recent years or recent year, they find the happiness in the littlest things in life, the smallest things. And although it hasn't quite penetrated my thick skull yet, it's people that I've surrounded myself with that do find that type of happiness, and I'm not there yet. But it's okay for me to admit that this is my journey and the things that I got to go through. But I do find that these people do find enjoyment in very simple things. And for example, the capuchin. And it's just you can find so much enjoyment in these little things in life, and that's why we need to really think about looking at more capuchins as we're on this call, because the capuchin actually is, although I have a lot of humor behind it, the capuchin really is a example of taking something small and really enjoying certain aspects of life. So when you get a capuchin, what you're really looking at is something that makes somebody happy somewhere. And it's not outside of themselves, but it's happiness found inside of themselves, and they find joy in the little things. And so as we look at this capuchin enjoying his day,
you know, it reminds me of, sorry.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, it reminds me of that time that Xander was outside going to the bathroom and your neighbor like flipped out. Remember that? So
oh yeah. Yeah.
So
you know, that story continues too, but yeah, go ahead.
So he's got a neighbor that is really afraid of dogs, and my dog is like a little puppy, like 8, 9 months old, super cute, super loving. Like he's not gonna bite you.
Right? In your little Xander.
Yeah, he's like he'll just run up to you and he'll just start licking you or whatever. He's not gonna bite you or anything. He doesn't bite really. I mean, unless you get him like in like fighting mode, right? But anyways, so I'm walking down the sidewalk, and this lady gets so freaking scared of Xander, so scared. She starts like freaking out. And me being the way I'm such a jerk. I was like, well, I need to let him keep bothering her because this will prove her wrong. That dogs are not something to be afraid of, and that she just had one bad experience, and this is why she's so afraid of the dogs. If anything, I would want Xander to prove her wrong by being loving, et cetera, et cetera. But anyways, the whole point being that I don't know how many people appreciate my dog. Like it's like everyone loves him. Like the other day, like they walked in and the first thing they were like, well, "Where's Xander at?" You know what I mean? So, I mean, he brings a lot of joy to a lot of people because he's cute, because he's a cute little puppy. And then, you know, you can be the type of person that allows things like that to bother you instead of bringing you happiness. I think just about everything in the world can bring you happiness. And it's just the fact that you know, there's something that you have to get past that's making you see that thing in a negative light or in a negative way.
Yeah, I think the real key is just, stop trying to find things to so identify with and really start finding, for me especially, every video I've ever made on my channel was always a lesson to myself. I know a lot of people might have felt like I was giving them advice, but it really was just a lesson to myself. The things that I went through over the last two
Yeah.
years, I mean, only a quarter of them, but I mean, I think Trey, you were the same way, right? When you learned something about yourself, you made a video about it because you had this like revelation.
I mean,
Uh,
the intention more so now is just telling you what I've experienced. Like
yeah,
if I would have made a video like 3 or 4 months ago, I probably wouldn't have had the same intention. You know, I probably would have taken a teacher's standpoint. But like
hmm
now I don't think that way. I just think, well, this is what I've learned. And this is, what's made me grow and develop. We all have different paths, right? We're all just trying, we're headed to the same place ultimately, but it's just it's how long you get there or what the path is that differs.
yeah, I think that was the biggest thing too from the beginning of my channel. Teaching, teaching, and then it started becoming. I think it really started changing around the time where I posted that FI rant, where I started switching the whole angle
You
of
mean the
kind of,
one where you were outside?
yeah, yeah. I
Okay.
think that was the real turn point. Actually, I went back a while back with my girlfriend and I went back and we looked at where that kind of shift happened. There was a point. Now I don't know. Some of you subscribers stuck around for a long time. There was a point in the very beginning of my channel back in 2015 where I came off as extremely arrogant and knowing, and I never took those videos down because I think I want people to see what self-awareness and being able to see, like, okay, how life can take somebody. And I'm going to leave those videos up there forever too. I want people to see the path that one takes. Even this video 5 years from now will be like, wow, who's that guy? And that's kind of the concept though, is to be able to watch my own journey. I can't even watch my old videos. Like, I make myself sick. I'm like, dude, that's crazy. Like, I can't believe I can't even do it. Like,
I was
it's real.
such a prick.
Yeah, like I'm like, I really have a hard time watching my old videos, although they do have decent content and things about typology which are good. I can't knock on all the content. It's just me, I mean, and the key that I have to learn is how to appreciate that stage in life. Even now, I need to look back and look at that was a stage I was going through, and kind of what I was dealing with and wrestling with at the time. And now I wrestle with different problems and different things and bigger challenges. And I think that as long as your problems, the good sign that you're making development is your problems get bigger and bigger versus little smaller and smaller. If your problems get smaller and smaller, you're doing something wrong. When your problems start getting bigger and bigger, instead of like, oh, how do I feed myself today? But now it becomes, how do I feed these 100 people today, or this my whole
I,
family
w-
today?
I would say I would say like my example for that same thing would be like, you know, how do I get this person to do this, or how do I get this done? Um, Instead of something small like that, something like big about yourself and your entire reality. Like, just like, how do I get past this blockade that I'm experiencing in my entire life, as like past, present, how am I supposed to take how am I supposed to get past this blockade, instead of something as small as, like, I don't know, something little. I just think the attention may be in the wrong place.
Yeah, for me, it's I'm facing the biggest problem I've ever faced before in my life right now. My personal life, I'm facing one of the biggest challenges
Feeding a
that I've.
hundred people.
Yeah, that was an example, but one of the biggest challenges I've ever faced was what I'm dealing with currently, and really being able to look inside and see all the constructs. It's like the way that I would picture. I wish I had Trey's brain for this because he's really good at metaphors. But the way that I would picture it is like walking into your own structures, things that are not stable, and you're seeing everything and it looks like it's destroyed. Like your whole city of structures are everything that you've ever they have no foundation. They're kind of sinking in sand. It's like seeing a city half buried in sand. Like it just the whole thing is just jacked up, right? And you're like, man, that bridge is half done. That house is like
You're
leaning
talking about like
sideways.
patterns and behaviors that you're doing that, like, you no longer, like, the foundational belief that you had that supported that is no longer there, right? Is that what
Yeah,
you're saying?
and it's halfway buried because it didn't work. I mean, it's like a ghost town. You're seeing these structures and you're saying, okay, and they still have their effect on you though. They still have their pull on you, and you see how these things are beginning to operate. And you get flashes like, okay, this particular thing is operating in me, and you can feel it emanating in you. For me, I deal with anger more than anything. Anger is my number one problem. It's something that I've worked on for years, and I don't. I think anger in itself is not a bad thing. I think it's a normal experience. I think that anger directed at the wrong people is the problem. And me, I'm very externalized. I push everything out. So where it's something I've really been dealing with, and it's a tough thing. And I used to previously I never really was faced with that until recently, where I've really started seeing it come out more than it's ever has. And circumstances have brought it out. But see, the thing is, it's not those circumstances. It's those things have always been there. I just hadn't had the right circumstances to bring those things to fruition. So I've never been able to face them directly because I've always externalized everything. And once you're faced with it, and then you start seeing the constructs of those after the fact, it's really hard to be angry and be self-reflective at the same time. You can't. I think it's actually pretty contradictory or mutually exclusive. You can't be self-aware and angry at the same time. They wrestle with each other. I'm at the point where I feel the anger and I hit this point where I have to go totally silent because I can feel it, but I'm still trying to be aware of it, like what's going on. And then I wish other people would stop, taking out on me as I'm trying to process this because it's triggering more anger. And it's not even them, it's just they're saying things that actually trigger it in me. And so
Yeah.
it's like these things are bubbling up to the surface and it's about to spill over and they're just pouring more water in it. Where I'm trying to contain it enough to be able to understand it without losing control. That's where the balance is. And really being
Yeah.
able to find that balance point for me. Whereas a lot of people may not be the anger issue. It may be something else. It may be, this loneliness feeling. I don't have loneliness in the same way. I know that I'm alone, but it's not oh my God, I'm so alone and someone hug me and hold me, make me feel secure. I don't really have that feeling. I've never felt, I mean, I've felt that at periods in my life, but it's not super common. Honestly, I think I could live on an island by myself and eat pineapple and hang out with monkeys and I'd be okay.
Yeah, man, capuchin.
Yeah, like I really don't think that would be if that's any core fear of mine is the loneliness factor. It's the only thing that I could see myself on the island is throwing a big coconut at monkeys because they're pissing me off. They're not letting me sleep at night.
Yeah.
That kind of thing. My anger
Yeah.
manifesting on when the monkeys are actually just doing the natural dance of life. The monkeys are just doing what they do, but I somehow am going to make it the. Why are you so mad at these monkeys? When I'm screaming at these monkeys, right? And they're screaming back at me in the tree, and it's just like you can blame the monkeys, and I'll say it's the fucking monkeys, and they're just like, what are you talking about, man? Like they're monkeys, of course they're going to be screaming.
Yeah.
Like why are you so mad? The monkeys are naturally going to be screaming. And then you can have that moment of self-reflection, go, oh yeah, they're monkeys, they scream. That's
what they do.
what they do. Like, and then you start recognizing that you're getting mad because of something internal. It's something that you're dealing with, and it's
You
not really
can't
the monkeys.
you can't really change the world. Like people, like if I told you I want you to be this way, but then someone else told you I want you to be this way, it's not like I can actually change you to be that way just because you're going to have other things in your environment trying to make you a different way. You know what I mean? You can't satisfy everyone in the world at the same time because one person will want you to be one way and one person will want you to be another way. So ultimately, instead of trying to change things in your environment, if you just start looking inside yourself, if everyone looks inside themselves and they stop trying to change the outside world and they recognize that the only reason they've been wanting to change the outside world is because of this inner work that's been lacking inside of themselves. I think it's funny. How are you supposed to do anything in the world if you don't have it's like seeing something broken or something you want to do and then using a broken tool to fix the thing that's broken. Like you can't fix it if the tool's broken as well. You've got to first fix the tool and then you can fix the thing. The tool is you. You're a tool.
Oh
You're
man.
a tool. You've gotta work on yourself first. And then when you understand what's happening within yourself, then you can understand maybe what you should do in the environment. But even then, when you do that thing, where is it coming from? Right? So I just think it's important that we stop having this attitude of the world having done something wrong. The world is the world. Good luck trying to make it exactly how you want it. Because there's a whole bunch of other people that are doing the exact same thing. If you change yourself and you just let the world be as it is, you'll be much more satisfied with your life.
Yeah, that's it's all boiled down in control and people trying to push their own agendas out into the real world. And I think there's a duality that exists that people are they think that what you see in society is two types. I mean, two American society that is. There's two types of people. People are the business people who are going to make something of themselves, and the people who are like anti that way, right? So there's like this way or this way, and very rarely do you have the people in the middle who are just playing each role as they need to. They're just like, yeah, okay, I can go
I see what you
take a
mean.
vacation. I can go take a vacation and then I'm going to come back and work really hard and I'm not going to worry about work when I'm on a vacation. And those people are being present in the moment.
Yeah.
So, and, if you would have seen me 5 years ago or so, it's like, I'm going to change the world. Well, in reality, the world kicks your ass. And then you realize that it's not as easy as it seems. And nor do you need to,
Yeah.
it's a realization in the map of the Enneagram is realizing that sometimes life has its own way. It has its own direction, and you can appreciate the natural flow of it. That's what the letting go part is. It's like it's moving anyway, right?
That's what wisdom is.
Yeah, it's moving anyway, and
Yeah.
you look at point seven. Point seven really talks about this. Is the holy plan? It's doing its own thing. It has a natural intelligence to it. I mean, it's doing its own thing. It's amazing, actually. It's like when you burn your hand on a stove, and it scars your hand or damages your hand actually going to heal. I'm really brutal today, man. Where did I come
I
up?
was like, what?
Oh man, this is bad. Okay, so when you burn your hand on a stove and it's damaged, your body's naturally going to heal it, right? So that's the concept behind it, is that you don't have to
These are all
actually
the
think
things you
about.
remember.
Yeah, right. These are the examples. These are the metaphors that come to my
These are
head.
the
Like,
things that make you feel anger.
yeah, they're horrible. But you look at my hand, and you're just like, wow. And you don't have to stare at your hand and go, heal, heal, right?
Right. It's got its
It,
own work.
it's got its own work. It's got its own flow. The body's going to do it naturally. The cells move on their in their own direction, right? They're healing on their own, and you don't have to control the cells, and they just do what they do because they have a natural intelligence to it, right? So same concept with the entire cosmos. Everything is flowing in its own direction and it's going to do its thing with or without you. I mean, hell, you could go jump off a bridge today and life is going to still do it. It's going to be like, oh shit.
Maggots will still eat you alive.
But even then, if you jumped off a bridge, you think you're escaping life because all of a sudden you think you have free will. But life is like, I planned that, you dumbass.
If life could speak, man. If life could speak.
I mean, that's oh man, that's what makes it amusing to me.
Stories it
Like,
tell.
yeah, it's just like you know, I'm not going to get in the whole free will conversation. I think there's a lot to it, but uh, I think there's a strong aspect of really just identifying this. You don't always have to control everything. It's natural. I mean, try to control your cells. Tell your cells to do a better job than they do on their own, right? I challenge you to write a business plan for your cells to actually heal themselves. Okay, so that's the challenge. There is, how can you actually tell the cells in your body to heal themselves better than and give them work better than they do on their own, right? And if you guys don't know what I'm talking about, there's this video that you guys have to see, and if you haven't
You
seen it,
have to, and if you don't, you'll die.
well, you will die anyway, but you have to see this video. Anyway, what it does is it's a representation of what happens inside a cell at the molecular level, and it kind of zooms out to an organic level. And you can see like the mitochondria, you can see the nucleus of the cell, you can see all the different, you know, the ribosomes and everything working together like a giant symphony happening. And it's crazy because you see this thing like walking on the DNA strand and pulling. It's crazy to look at. It's like a whole, like it's like looking inside of Amazon and seeing all the different,
I can imagine
all the different components working together, but there's no error, and there's none. It's just flowing.
Yeah,
It's just amazing. It's just like you can see this whole thing happening on its own, and it's just it can completely, like, if you really sit back and watch this and stuff. And for people who are like science nerds or biology nerds, it's probably not as impressive to you because you've studied it. But take your intelligence out of it. Just remove your intelligence for once and just watch it. Just watch it, and you can actually see. Think about how those things actually work together, and just the innate intelligence of those things.
I read, I don't remember where, sorry. I don't remember where, I think this is a good addition. I don't remember where I read this or where I heard this, but somewhere I heard that when a child is told the name of something, it brings the significance out of it. So like when a child looks at a flower, he can appreciate the beauty of the flower and it's like in its fullness. The moment you say, "Oh, that's a flower," is the moment that it loses some of its almost like what makes it amazing from your perspective, right? So like in that same way, what you were saying, just like if you take yourself out of it and your intelligence and what you know, when you remove the knowledge of the thing, you just have the thing and you can appreciate it in this much grander way. Like the whole ecosystem of the cells and boxes going through Amazon.
Yeah. So there's a commenter here that says there is error, cancer, and mutations. Claire, I think you're not looking at the bigger picture. No offense intended, of course, but think about cancer in itself, not what it does and how it can ruin people's lives, but think about cancer in itself and how it actually knows inherently to replicate itself. It knows inherently how to mutate. It knows how free radicals can actually damage cells. And it actually, there's an innate intelligence to that too. Mutations, same thing. How can it mutate a cell? There's an intelligence to all this. That's the point. And so when you talk about error, it's not actually error. If you look at a computer program and there's an error, there's two types of errors in computers. There's a syntax error, which the program crashes, and there's logical errors, which is just a programming error on the mathematical side, right? So with a syntax error, the program goes and crashes or doesn't compile, right? So it's the same thing. This is not an error because it still runs. Okay, so it's not really a true error. It's an error as in the cell's no longer working how we would like it to work, but it's still working in its own way. So that's
the error exists in your perception and what you want to happen.
Exactly. And it's unfortunate because it's really my heart goes out to cancer people. I'm not this is, of course, I'm not trying to make it sound better than it is, but the point is to understand that all these things operate on their own. And this is where we have to start letting go of this control part, is because they operate on their own anyway. And this is what Enneagram 7s have to learn to let go. And as it's like you're learning to let go of this whole, I have to plan and control and map out all these different possible things. Whereas other types on the Enneagram are going to struggle with different things. That's a big component of the 7, is needing to constantly plan to try to map out the course of their own life consistently. So that's the concept behind the holy plan or holy wisdom. And that's what when we start getting into Enneagram videos, which 7 is actually going to be the first video released. So when I release the 7 video, you will see a little more of diving into it to get to that point. So hopefully I'll get that video done in the next week and a half or 2. Can't promise, a lot of stuff going on, but anyway, that aside, I think there is a lot more to understanding this natural thing and letting go of control, or letting go of this rejection component. I'll tell you, back when I was big on studying in NLP, we studied different attachments, right? You have your deprivation attachment, you have your rejection attachment, you have your control attachment. I looked into my psychology pretty deeply, and with the help of my close ones, of course. But I looked into my own psychology deeply, and I see how all of these things have taken root into my own psychology. NLP is neuro-linguistic programming. It's actually just a way for you to get into your own head and kind of figure out what programs you have in place. I need to actually do a lot more on myself. I think there's some psychological dysfunction there that needs to be pretty much immediately resolved. But in general, NLP is a tool you can use to actually kind of remap your brain patterns. So, for example, if you see a monkey and you get kind of pissed off look at just the very sight of a monkey.
Man,
right?
I'm looking at the cutest monkey. I can't even imagine being.
Yeah. So if for example, a lot of people will smell a certain smell and they'll immediately want to vomit. Right. And even like a smell of food that's not considered disgusting, but just a natural smell of food or some type of food, they immediately get sick. Right. Or they see something and they immediately throw up. Like, for example, the person who sees blood and throws up, that's what really NLP is used for, is the person to kind of counteract those brain patterns to do that. So those for you who don't know what NLP is, that's what it is. So I spent a lot of time looking at NLP stuff, and I really moved into seeing how these attachments play a role in my own life. And I realized I have all of them. I have a deprivation attachment to an extent, I have a control attachment, and I have a rejection attachment. So that's what we want to kind of narrow down, is how to actually tackle all these things. Because when you look at them, you're never going to be perfect in your own way, but there's a point where self-acceptance is key, self-awareness is key, but it's the law of the process. If you actually look at the 21 irrefutable laws of leadership, it's called the law of the process, is to understand and respect the process to growth, and stop trying to fix everything at once, and understand that every day, as long as you're doing the right thing every day and you're being consistent about those things, then those things will start naturally kind of fading away on their own. So that's really what it kind of boils down to. It's just kind of figuring out how to get to that, respect the process, and enjoy where you're at in the journey. So when I say self-acceptance, it's not that you want to accept being a fat, lazy bum and sitting on your rear. I mean, you could if you really are happy, but the question you have to ask yourself, like I told you in the beginning, is, are you happy? If you're not happy, then you need to figure out why, right? So point is that when you get to that point, you can start saying, okay, what is it that's going to make me happy? It's getting in touch with who you are. And part of happiness, what I believe, it's just a personal opinion, and Trey, you can chime in here too, but I think the personal opinion of happiness comes from a place where you actually move with life and stop resisting it. When you're a fat, lazy bum and you're not happy, it's not because you're fat and lazy, right? It's actually because you aren't dancing with life. You've quit life. Okay, so again, the two sides, this is the duality, right? You've got a person who tries to control life so much, and they try to manipulate life in their own way, and they use all their aggression and energy to try to wrestle life down. And then there's the people who quit and don't do anything, and they no longer even dance with life anymore. They lost their vigor and vitality, and they just sit, right? The happy person moves with life, does what's needed to be done, but also knows that life is kind of moving along, their life floating with life, and there's no resistance there. Right. And that's like right in the middle. Trey, you have anything to chime in on that?
I mean, I agree. I mean, just like when you turn on music, you start to feel the rhythm, and people start tapping their feet, and people start moving to the music. It's that same thing. There is something going on in your environment, and the more you resist to it, the more pain you cause within yourself. The more you learn to appreciate the sound that's coming out of the speaker, appreciate the type of music, the genre of music, the more variations of music you can appreciate, the more you'll be able to dance with it in life. You know, there's all kinds of variations of life. That's what I was saying by breaking down my walls, is that I have things that I'm resistant to, and in reality, I should be able to move with everything that happens in life. I shouldn't have anything you know, that's going to cause any pain. So yeah, I agree completely.
I think there's a marvelous beauty. Um, of course, I only know this intellectually, not through experientially, which I would love to be able to experience at one point or another. But I think there is a beauty to feeling even things that we perceive as negative. For example, fear. Okay, so if we think about fear logically, we naturally assume fear to be a bad thing. Oh, I don't want to feel afraid, or I am afraid, and it's so horrible to feel afraid. And when we start really thinking about fear, what does fear do that's actually positive, right? And fear might get you to run faster. It might actually do the fight or flight thing, and you might run from a bear in the woods. And if it weren't for that fear, you might have been clawed and eaten alive. Reverent Part 2, right?
Yeah.
So, my brain always has to go into these gruesome. It just doesn't stop, man.
Bear being eaten alive.
I mean, it just
Burning
does not
off
stop.
your hand.
I really got to think about what dark part of my soul these things come from.
This is the kind of stuff that would genuinely piss you off. So it's the only thing that's coming to your mind.
I mean, yeah, you know what would really piss me off is I'm just enjoying my nice s'mores in the wood and I get freaking chased by a bear. That would really piss me off. I'm like, finally, I never relax. I never take trips. I never do anything. So I finally decide, like it took me years. I'm like, you know what? I'm going to go to the woods and I'm going to eat myself some s'mores and I'm going to enjoy my evening. I'm going to enjoy this week of just being out in the wilderness. My first day, I'm setting up my tent and all you hear is, and I'm just like,
Oh man, that's great.
yeah, that would really piss me off. Oh man, yeah, I could see that being a problem for me for sure. So, but yeah, so I mean,
No.
the concept is still the same though.
I have something to add to that actually. Not the bear thing, but the thing before that. The other day I was thinking about that actually. I had dinner with Damon and Lily the other day, and I was thinking about something that they had said. They actually helped me out. I realized something. When I got home, I just started I had realized that a lot of the things that I had been believing in recently, the things that I've been, I guess I allowed myself to be too fluid, right? In the sense that I kind of just said, well, anything's okay. I'm okay with everything happening. And I wouldn't allow myself to feel all these emotions. So I started speaking to myself when I got home and just admitting a bunch of things to myself that I had been, putting to the side. And I admitted things that, just emotions I had been feeling and things that I had been kind of trying to put to the side, but, being truthful and honest with myself. And it made me realize that you can't really fully appreciate, your own safety, for example, and just the being present in a safe environment until you felt like an intense amount of fear and having a really bad environment. It's like you can't really know joy until you felt a deep sense of pain or sadness. You know what I mean? Not necessarily pain, but definitely sadness. You know, uh, if you are always in the if you're always in the happy side of life, then it starts to become normal to you. And yeah, you're happy, but you don't get the sweet nectar that's on the other side, which would be sadness. Sadness has a beauty to it, and so if you create a system for yourself where you become completely satisfied with everything, you're going to be missing out on things in life that really have their own inherent beauty and meaning. So otherwise, why would you be able to feel it?
Yeah, I think that's a step in the right direction. I'll tell you, I learned a lot from Lily too. I mean, it's tough sometimes because her perspective is very different from mine, even cognitively speaking. Makes it very hard sometimes to take in that information. But I think you're definitely spot on though, as far as really being able to kind of move with it. And when it comes to personality, I think that's it's a good place to start, because you at least know how you're moving with something. And the difference between what I read, what Osho actually said in one of his books.
Oh man.
Yeah. Osho, he's
the enlightened troll.
Yeah, he really is. He's like the enlightened troll. Like if Osho knew how to use like the internet, I mean, and if he were like in today's day and age,
oh my gosh.
oh man, I think he'd be bombing everybody's YouTube channel, like just hilariously. I think honestly, he'd be just trolling everyone. But what I did read about him was that he said, you know, it's interesting between Eastern and Western worlds, right? Is that I'm going to try to do the best I can to summarize it, but it blew my mind. Actually, Osho really does. Actually, he thinks on a different level, which kind of makes me like, wow, like it hits me really hard, even though he's like a new age Michael Jackson type of.
Yeah.
Of course, he's dead now, but the point is that when he was, you know, if you just watch Osho, you're like, what is he wearing? I mean, I'm just like, I mean, this guy.
Big glasses, and he's got like a Michael Jackson, like,
yeah,
purple,
like he's the new age hip hop star or something, you know, like, or retro or whatever. But he did mention that he said that the difference between the Eastern and Western is that if you look at Eastern, there's no actual medical science. He's like, if you really think about it, all the medical science comes out of Europe and United States and all these Western countries. And then you've got the Eastern, like the Chinese, but it's not even the same thing. It's acupuncture and using the meridians and energy based, right?
Yeah.
Very different. And it was unique because he said that the Western mentality, and you don't have to agree with this, it's just a point, but the Western mentality, is so interested in just understanding just to understand. Like that is their whole sole purpose, is just to understand. Whereas the Eastern world is the opposite. It's like understand enough to where you can not care about understanding anymore. And it's very different. So it's like, you know, you understand just enough to know how to navigate it, and then you don't need to understand it anymore. And so that was the difference, is the Western world keeps getting deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper into the subject. It's like, have you lost sight? The analogy he used, and I think this might be a good way to kind of picture this. The analogy he used was he focused on using a map or a person breaking out of prison. I think he said, like, okay, there's a person who's drawing all the maps and learning how to break out of prison, right? 3 years later, they're still planning.
And they've forgotten the sole purpose of the.
They forgot why they are actually doing the map.
Analogy. Yeah.
Yeah, you read that?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's the same principle that we're doing, is that we're studying typology so much that we forget why we're doing it.
To feel good about ourselves, to identify with something.
And I think that people who are typologists, as far as they're guilty of typism, I think they're actually all racist. And they just need to direct it elsewhere.
I mean, I thought we all knew that.
Yeah, no, but no, I'm just kidding about that. But I do think that they have lost sight of why we're doing this, right? I think typology is helpful to an extent, because then you can say, okay, how am I not receiving this message? This communication is broken, right? So Trey and I communicate pretty smoothly. We kind of get each other's meaning pretty instantaneously. It's not that case with other people. I'm sure Trey's talked to people and he was like,
I was just telling you guys the other day. I'll literally be like telling a bunch of people like this random thing that came to my mind, and everyone will look at me like, what the hell? And then there'll be this one dude who'll be like, bro, you blew my mind. And he'll start like asking questions, like, you know, challenging me and stuff. And like, just, I don't know, it's funny. No, I can't talk on the same wavelength as a lot of people.
I always say that there's always that one guy. I mean, you're talking and telling a story, right? And you're getting into it, and everybody else is looking at you like you're an idiot, right? And they're like, so have you seen like Kim Kardashian? And you're like, and now you're giving them the idiot look, like. And
this is one of you.
So it kind of goes back and forth, right? So you're listening to this and you're going back, and then there's that one guy who hears what you say, and he's like,
I've been in this situation so many times.
And he's like, dude, like, what the fuck? like, shit. And you're like, dude, it wasn't that deep, man. I was just talking about. He's like, no. And yeah, it's like he's like no. And I'm just like, oh,
world.
Yeah. So I think somebody wants to know your type. Are you drinking water? Right? It's not me drinking water, right?
I'm drinking water. Wait,
Yeah,
what?
okay. So somebody on the chat says they want to know your type. What's your answer to that, Trey?
Oh, I'm the dude drinking water. That's how I'm gonna go down in history. The dude drinking water.
Here lies dude drinking water.
Yeah, on the tombstone. Dude drinking water.
That's his greatest accomplishment is dude drinking water.
Yeah, I'm drinking some water, bro. I'm a human being. No, I'm a INFJ. Okay, so let me say something. Now that you asked this question, I gotta say this. I don't freaking know. Okay, we said ENTJ and then we moved to INFJ, and that makes sense. And so far, everything makes sense. There's nothing making me doubt it, right? But the point is that it got so deep into like all these different systems, and even systems that someone just made up on some Tuesday afternoon, and like it just got so far into it that it's like, if you're talking about MBTI, I'm pretty sure it's INFJ. It makes the most sense. But at the same time, like, I don't know. If you really psyched yourself out, I could be any type. I could sit here and I could convince myself I'm an ESTP, and it makes no sense. But I would figure it out, and I would make it ESTP.
Yeah, I mean that's the whole point. Is like, to an extent, there's now like I said, you can use different type systems. Probably 20 people think you're a different type, right? Some think you're INTJ, some think you're ENTJ, some think you're INFJ, some think you're INFP.
I'm FPK.
I just think you're Trey, TREY.
Yeah,
and that's
I'm the dude drinking water.
Yeah, the dude drinking water, right?
That's my type, bro.
DDW. It sounds like one of those Craigslist posts. DDW. Oh man. Yeah, no strings attached. DDW. What does that mean? Dude drinking water. Yeah, so she says, Trey, you don't seem like you could be ESTJ. Can you act out ESTJ?
Oh. Oh my gosh. I feel like I definitely know how to go about doing this, but I feel like I'm going to laugh so hard I won't be able to do it.
Yeah. So Trey can do it. I've seen him do it. Yeah, so I think he can definitely do it. But the point is, we're trying to get to the point where we don't really associate necessarily with types as much. We use it to kind of figure it out. Like I've typed Trey in several different systems to try to kind of at least have a good understanding of how he functions. So that's the idea behind it, is just kind of understanding enough, again, to just let it go. Like you're like, okay, I think I get the gist of it. So, but dude drinking water is the way to go. That's really what some.
I mean, if you want to know anything about me, like all of my depths of my very being, all you need to know is that I drink water. And once you know that, you know me better than I know myself.
Yeah. I will say this, though. Trey's a theorizer, and he thinks very philosophically. So whatever type category you want to put him in, feel free.
Oh, yeah, do that. That's cool.
Yeah,
I'll be whatever type you want me to be. I'll be an ISFJ. I'll be a INWR. I don't care.
Yeah.
I don't even know what INWR is, but if you come up with it, I'll be it.
Yeah, so that's what we mean. You can be any type, so yes, she says quench that thirst, Trey. So thirst quencher.
Quenched. Hashtag quenched.
Thirst quenched. Hashtag. Oh man. So but yeah, let's say that at some point though, we want to kind of shift this whole direction into a more understanding and being looser on the categories of type, or rather more loose on the categories of type. just enough to get an understanding, and that's about as far as we need.
Sorry, I felt it was relevant. I've read from Ram Dass and from Osho. They talk about the different channels of perception, and they talk about how, um, on the very first level, social niceties like, oh, hey, how are you today, or good morning, or whatever. Just, you're not going very deep into this. The second level is, I believe it's the game of roles. Like, one moment you have this guy talking down to this guy and ordering this guy around, and then his boss comes in, and then now he's the mouse, and his boss is the elephant, or the not the elephant. That's a bad example. The lion, right? So like, um, we play this game of roles. This is my brother, and that's my cousin's mother. It's like we play this game of roles, but then the next level, I think, is recognizing that different kinds of people do different kinds of things. It's like the typology level, right? Like, okay, well, ENTJs do this kind of thing, and Aries does this kind of thing, right? But then you go on to the next level, and this is a higher perception. This is the goal, is to move past the roles and to move past the types of people and move into a recognition that we're all human beings, right? And then beyond that, I think there's and I couldn't, the way the two people do their levels is different, but I think the next one is recognizing that we're all the same person, or recognizing that there's no difference between you and me. So, I mean, I think it's important we recognize that ultimately we're just human beings. So typology has its practical uses, and it has, like, it has it's like how Damon was talking about the Western, you know, way of going about things, just like trying to learn as much as we can about one person. I think it was Muji that talked about how you can have like all these like psychoanalytics, like 300, 600 pages about like who you are and what defines you. But as you walk away with your 600 pages, you'll feel that there was something missing. You are not just the the complex parts of your mind. There's much more to what makes you than just the fact that, you were born in Wisconsin, and you were, you have this issue in your mind, et cetera, et cetera. That doesn't make you really. On like a core level, you are much bigger than that. And, we're all human. So I think that's a great way to see that.
Yeah, it's interesting when you read these gurus too. Is like what you wind up getting is different. Again, different perspectives of the same core thing. Osho was more focused on sex. I mean, if you really think about it, and whereas other gurus like don't feel a craving for it at all. And I'm the type of person who believes that you know there's a little truth in everything. So when you look at different religions, you kind of see the little remnants that are kind of universal, and then you can kind of pull those out of those religions and be like, oh, I see how this all kind of connects.
Oh yeah, definitely.
And how earlier you were talking about you have to lose it before you know it.
Oh, what?
How you were talking about how you have to lose it before you know it, type of thing.
Oh, are you talking about like the pain and like joy, et cetera, et cetera?
Yeah, you have to lose it, and it's interesting because I talk about this in the 7 video a lot more extensively. But you have to. It's part of Holy Plan to essentially have an ego, and it's part of Holy Plan to actually be move past it. And it happens at one point or another.
Yeah.
Some people, it might happen right at death. The ego dies with your body.
Yeah.
For other people, it might happen when you're 10 years old. But the point is, you always get one, and how fast it develops or how little it develops is obviously kind of in your reign. But at some point, it's going to either fall away or you'll die, and then it falls away anyway. It's part of the plan.
Yeah.
You're born, your heart beats, and then when you die, your heart stops. It's kind of a, and then the Christian mythology, or I'll call it mythology or methodology rather, is that they call it born again.
Yeah.
And
Baptism.
yeah, so you're born again when you lose the ego, right? And they
Right.
don't refer to it as ego; they refer to it as being born in Christ or born in spirit.
That's
Um,
sacrificing yourself, though. That's they talk about that. You have to sacrifice yourself for the kingdom of God.
yeah, yeah, you have to sacrifice yourself, and this I think that yourself is the ego,
Yeah.
right? You all are talking about astrology over here. You said you would have never guessed Trey was an Aries,
Yeah.
and yeah, so
Well, it depends on the way that you use the. Sorry, I don't know what I'm talking about. I don't really look into astrology that much, but I know that there's like a, is it a 12 or a 13?
there's a 13 sign system. There's a 12 sign system. There's
According to the 13,
tropical.
I'm Pisces, I
Yeah,
think.
there's a tropical way of doing it. Then there's the other way. I think it's called Sidereal or something, and it goes the other way. I mean, Trey's right on that where he'll switch kind of back and forth depending on what system you use. Again, in some he's INFJ, and some he's ENFJ, and some he's ISFJ. Same concept.
INRW, bro.
Yeah. So
Man that drinks water.
yeah, astrology is interesting in itself, and I think there is a little bit of truth to it too. So I think there's a lot of stuff out there that has a little bit of truth. Interesting. I think Russell just popped in on the chat, Trey.
Really?
The guy that sent you the numerology stuff.
Oh, okay.
So
Awesome.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I
So
don't know the technicalities of it, but
yeah. So, but there's a lot of different types of astrology out there. I think it's pretty fascinating. In the last month or two, I've done a lot of study on it, just so I can at least know what I'm listening to when people try to talk. When people talk to me, I want to at least understand what they're saying. Because previously they're talking about Jupiter and Pluto flying across zones and crap, and I had no idea what they're referring to. Now at least I can kind of follow it enough to enough to get a good understanding of how it kind of all works out. So, I still don't know which one works, Vedic or Western, or I don't know which one. I mean,
uh,
mine's jacked up no matter what system I look at.
Russell
Mine's
uses
all,
both. He does cross comparisons.
yeah, it's probably the better way to go. Get a little bit of truth from both of them.
Yeah. He
Yeah,
says
I
that
mean,
a lot of times they'll sort of validate each other, um,
yeah, I mean,
describe more information.
that's what I'd imagine. I mean, just kind of get what you can out of both, and at least try to get a fuller perspective. Like I said, either way I look at mine, it's still jacked up. So it's just like, I have all those little oppositions everywhere in my chart. So it's just super confusing for me. I mean, I look at it and I go, okay, this is a little too much. Squares and
Yeah,
oppositions.
all the conflict in your
Yeah, like maybe that's why I always talk about gore and stuff. It's because my
the
chart is like
conflicted.
blood. Like I'm like an example. Like imagine me at like teaching kindergarten. So
Right.
imagine me teaching little kids like how like a principle works. Okay,
You're
so
talking about the burning your hand. How
yeah,
much
so imagine you
time?
put your hand on a stove.
Like, oh, that's a normal thing.
You know when your skin smelts? And there's always that one evil kid in the class that goes like this. Yeah, there's always that one, and he's gonna be nodding his head. Yeah. So,
Yeah.
but in general, I think that it's just astrology has its truths behind it. But again, I looked really, really deep into it. I think there is a lot of the Forer effect going on, a lot of confirmation bias, because I think all of us can read the same thing at some point. Look, I'm pulling a random astrology thing that was on my desk here. And Trey, I'm going to read yours because this is actually Aries.
Okay.
Okay. And so, but read this. You were born with the potential to give the world specific gifts, benefits, and blessings that are unique to you. One of those gifts have been slow in developing. You've never been ready to confidently offer it in its fullness. In fact, if you've tried to bestow it in the past, it may have caused problems. But the good news is that in the coming months, the gift will finally be be ripe. You'll know how to deal crisply with the interesting responsibilities it asks you to take on. I was like, here's your homework. get clear about what the gift is and what you'll have to do to offer it in its fullness. Now, honestly, without joking, all joking aside, do you relate to anything this damn thing said?
No.
Nothing. You don't think that? I think this sounds like where you're at.
Oh, really?
I mean, what do you? I mean, honestly.
I mean, no. Okay, so like when I thought, okay, sorry, it was the way you phrased the question that had me answer that way.
Yeah, this is not a this is not a description. This is like
actually, yeah, no, it is, and there's been other things to confirm it too. I was thinking confirmation bias.
Yeah. So anyway, this isn't actually Aries.
Really?
That's my point.
Oh.
You can confirmation bias. Like you can, I can lie and say it was Aries. You're like, yeah, I relate to that, and then all of a sudden you're like, damn. That's my point though. Is like, but I think Russell's right on to something. There are people made a gimmick about sun sign astrology, just like people do MBTIs, like real superficially, and there's a lot that is misinterpreted or used to generate income or whatever without getting into the details of it. Sun sign astrology to me is a joke for sure. Now, as far as everything, I think there's probably at least a little bit of truth into it. I mean, there was this whole lunar thing going on lately. I guess it was a super blue blood moon going on yesterday. It was like the morning it happened. So there's some kind of lunar pole, right? Some kind of effect, because not only is it a super moon, but it's also a blood moon. So lunar eclipse happening all at the same time. So, yeah, so I think all that, it has some, definitely, it affects the ocean, right? It pulls the tides on the ocean. It's going to create high tides and low tides based on the moon and the lunar position. Why wouldn't that affect us? We're like 75% water.
Yeah, that doesn't make any sense.
Huh? Why wouldn't it?
Right.
Yeah, no, so there's got to be some kind of effect. Now, how far that goes, I don't know. I mean, it might be minimal. It might be, and that's just talking about water, right? That's not even talking about like everything else.
Yeah.
That's not even talking about, you know, what effect it has on our psychology or what it has on anything else. That to me is what really makes it to where I think it has a lot of, there's a lot of more than what we kind of give it credit for. But at the same time, I'm not necessarily saying it's all true. And I think there's a lot of misinterpretation and, of course, our own perspectives based on what we studied. Like I can think that I've been studying this book recently, Micro Expressions, right? And it's one of the things in the books talks about particular MBTI types or cognitive people or whatever types you want to use. And it talks about how you can actually notice these particular functions in people using micro expressions. And damn, Alice, I completely missed that. I'll go back to micro expressions in a second. Alice said, because you're the dude drinking water, essentially, the moon is going to have more of an effect on you.
Oh my goodness.
Wow, Trey. I mean, have you felt a little off in the last few days?
You know, I didn't feel off. I mean, I didn't notice that I felt off until you read that Aries description to me. And now
non-Aries description.
Yeah, and now I'm feeling it.
Yeah, all right. That's the point. But yeah, so been reading this book about micro expressions, and I can read a certain chapter that says you will see this effect happen in the face, right? When this person's cognitive function, or you will see these gestures happening when this person is using this cognitive function. Okay, that makes sense, right? But when looking at it, you say, okay, now they're all saying, oh, the cheeks will rise, right? Using this muscles, your zygomatics. Oh, my zygomatic. Anyway, you'll see that they'll say the cheeks will rise. Well, how much? What's the degree of measurement? I mean, at some point, when does it cross that FEFI line? Maybe somebody got hit in the face and they started flexing their other muscles, right? So, I mean, it's all, there's subjectivity that's involved there that doesn't give it 100% truth. But I think there's a point where there is some truth to it. Like I've been pretty well at being able to type that way in an interesting way. I've been able to play a game where I can type, look at a person, and then they actually come out and say that's their type. It's pretty cool. You know, you're like, oh wow, I guess that's right. And I think people who've been doing typology long enough, they start looking at people and they start unconsciously registering the same patterns, and they almost immediately know someone's type just by seeing the same pattern over and over again. They see that immediacy, like, oh yeah, that's definitely it. That's definitely, that can't be anything else but that type.
Yeah.
And so there's that side of it. But again, what if that whole thing is built on being wrong every time? What if you've the whole time you thought ESTJs were really INFJs, right? The first person you typed as an ESTJ was actually an INFJ, but you archetyped that as INFJ.
This is how it happened for me. I literally I moved to Texas, and the moment I met you, I knew TE was not like, I was like, okay, I thought this was what TE was. And I was like, and it kind of created a dilemma for me.
Yeah, there's hashtag mid-type crisis. Who am I?
Yeah, you guys got to join Slack.
So one of the reasons, a lot of people, this is a side point, but it's actually fascinating because Trey's actually been one of the hardest people for almost anyone to type. And people have really, really struggled typing Trey. And I've heard a lot of people who think they're great at typing try to type Trey, and they're all argue with each other. There's no consensus on Trey's type. And
the guy that drinks water.
Yeah, so there's multitude of reasons for this, but I think that a lot of it has to do with just Trey's place in life too. He's the most relaxed person I've probably known in my entire life. And I joke and I call him a slug because this is Trey's average position.
He's right. I'm always like that.
Yeah, and it's like, hey Trey, there is literally a fire truck heading for your head. Oh, really? Where? Oh shit. And then he gets up and he casually just walks away. And yeah, so exactly. Cat Plant says, is Trey a stoner type? Yes, but he's not a stoner.
Yeah, I don't like
But he had more people call him and ask him for weed than anybody I've known. I mean, it wouldn't be surprising, like, if somebody dialed his phone right now at 11 o'clock at night and was like, hey Trey, you got some bud, bro? I've seen it live. Live. Like, somebody just call him up and be like, hey, you got some? He's like, dude, I don't.
Oh,
like,
that's right. I remember that.
Yeah, and he goes, dude, I don't have any. What do you mean? I don't smoke, man. They're like, no, I know you do, man. He's like, I don't. This is the kind of stuff that, yeah, but definitely.
I don't even know where I'd start to find some, and everyone else is like just assuming that I have it. Like, I'm like, I've got it all over the place or something. Yeah, no,
yeah.
I'm not interested.
It's crazy. It's crazy to see that kind of happening so frequently too. People like, they think he's a stoner, but the point is, you can use different systems, and based on your experience, you can find out if Trey's really a stoner or not. No, you can find out. You're going to form your own conclusion about Trey at some point. You're going to form a conclusion like,
if you're lucky. Yeah,
you're going to say, in my eyes, and if anybody wants to know my opinion on this, is in Socionics, Trey is an EIE. He's going to be ENFJ. Okay. And that's my opinion based on how I know him. In MBTI, he's probably more on the INFJ side.
You've said multiple times, you've switched between that and ILI like a number of times. Yeah.
So, I've moved back and forth, but the reality is Trey is so fluid. He moves like water. Exactly. Captain. Yeah. He just goes whatever he wants to be. And I guess what is your astrology? Pisces? Isn't that associated with like water or something? Maybe that's
the guy that drinks water.
Yeah, maybe that's what this is all about, Trey.
Just the water. It's all that matters, man.
Nobody's been able to figure your type. But I think that when we really think about it,
I'll tell you what my type is. Short Mexican girls.
Yeah, you like short Mexican girls?
I do. Short Mexican girls, short Asian girls, and
why is all the pictures of the girls you sent me that you've talked to in the past, none of them have been short Mexican girls?
Yeah, it's because it's not as common as like short white girls. But I
Yeah,
don't
so
like blonde. I'm not a fan of like blonde hair. I'm more like brunette or black hair. That's my type.
Russell says people born on the 30th are more E, but I think Trey is I. Yeah, I actually think he's I too. I think he's I too. Trey is very talkative,
Yeah, I know.
but I think he's more on the I side because his talking points are not really dialogues; they're more monologues.
Because I get really into it. You know, I'm
Yeah,
like,
but you're in your head. Yeah, you're in your head speaking like it's like you're not, you don't even ask questions like, you understand what I'm saying? It's just like you just talk. But it's actually really enjoyable to see. But it's like, but I think I think it is very I just think you're very comfortable speaking with people. But even though I know you don't even like speaking with people.
I've begun to enjoy it a lot. I've changed a lot. I like talking to people now. Before I didn't.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was like,
it's kind of.
go ahead.
Alice goes, he seems like an image type in Enneagram. Trey is no. No.
What was that
not,
one thing? Was it the McDonald's outfit? Was that it? I had a job at McDonald's like a while back, and I remember.
Yeah, he's less image than almost anybody I know. Like Trey, if that's his last number, it's going to be a 2, 3, or 4 on his last side. Like Trey is a definitely not an image type. Like Trey does not care about his image. Like, yeah, he's like he'll invite people over and he'll go, oh, yeah, my room's fucked up. That's cool though. Like doesn't care. He's like walking around in a Donald shirt. Doesn't care what he works. His career doesn't matter. None of that. None of the things on the surface matter. He doesn't care about being seen as unique. He doesn't care about being an individual. He's just a dude drinking water.
Dude, drinking water.
And he doesn't have like
it doesn't. I mean, maybe like when I was in high school, I would have been concerned with my image. I feel like when I first started my YouTube channel in high school, I was concerned about my image right there. Around the time that I moved to Texas, that was no longer the reality. It may have been a little bit, but it's pretty much gone now. I don't give a single crap about how I look or how I'm perceived to be.
Yeah. I think honestly, despite what people think, Trey, in my opinion, is closest to type 5 on the Enneagram. Although he doesn't demonstrate the characteristics of a typical 5, his ego defense, knowing Trey is more in the area of 5 than any other type on the Enneagram. He's a head center for sure. He's a philosopher. So I think he's always thinking. Thinking is his go-to. He's a head center, that's for sure. No matter what anybody says, he's questioning it. It's like, he's type 5 and it's a wing 4 for sure, in my opinion. And I think Trey, you're on board with that, huh?
Yeah, that sounds good. Yeah. It doesn't really matter.
No, it doesn't.
I mean,
yeah, I think Cat Plant's hitting on you too.
Who?
Plant.
Cat Plant. He's neat weed. He is weed. I am weed.
Yeah,
I'm the weed that drinks water.
And I purposely went really silent after that to make it super awkward for Cat Plant.
Oh, gotcha. A moment of silence.
I was hoping that you went silent too. Yeah, kind of like that. That was good.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. That'll work.
Yeah. And so, but point being is that I think that, but Trey doesn't care about his Enneagram type. None of it matters. There's a point where you transcend all that crap. I mean, you use it to understand what your problem is. I mean, why would you want to be an Enneagram type if you really think about it?
Yeah, I mean that's dumb. I mean, honestly, like we have 7 billion people on the planet, and you want to divide them into 9 and say I'm unique. What? Why don't you just be yourself and recognize how unique you are every time you make a single decision?
That's what the people with the types in their profiles.
Wait, sorry, what?
People with the types in their profiles. That's what they do. They're making themselves consecutively more unique.
Oh, well, yeah, but still, like, when you get so caught up in the complexity of it, you're not enjoying yourself. Like, yeah, you're unique, but you're so focused on the fact that you're unique, you're not actually seeing that you're unique.
Yeah.
Like he was saying, like, you have to know just enough to not care anymore.
The real key, Alice, is getting into Enneagram. When you start looking into it, it's not about our reaction in like our behavior. It's more about our reaction to the delusion of the ego that's created. So if you're thinking about, let's say, type 7, for whatever reason, right? Type 7 is their holy ideas behind it. Their specific delusions, right? So, so your holy ideas are going to be holy plan, holy work, and holy wisdom that are associated with point 7. When you lose touch with these things, you're going to have a specific reaction to that. And that reaction is going to manifest different behaviors based on your upbringing, your culture, your background, who you hang out with, that type of thing. But what are you compensating for? And that's how you really identify an Enneagram type is what is your ego doing to compensate for loss of connection with reality or true nature? So when you're looking into it and typing people, you can almost instantaneously at least narrow it down to a few Enneagram types based on the specific delusion of what you're experiencing. Now, again, we don't want to type people with Enneagram, but we want to kind of see what specific delusion's going on. And usually there's more than one. We want to kind of see that and then be able to say, okay, this is how we're mapping true nature. And the way that I've done that I've not actually read as far as I've gone, and you may actually be able to see more of this in the future too. And I hope that it has some accuracy to it because I really think it's pretty cool. Is actually looking at what people focus on when they start speaking about spirituality. Because spirituality, when people start becoming more enlightened, I'm going to use that word loosely, is when people start becoming a lot more enlightened, what happens is that they start speaking they see the truth more, right? They're seeing from their vantage point more. So what are they going to focus on the most when they start talking?
That's interesting, yeah.
So it's, when you start seeing what they're speaking about more, you can almost instantaneously identify what their Enneatype was at one point because they're especially sensitive to that one thing.
That's the one thing. I'm sorry.
Go ahead. Yeah, this is awesome.
That's the one thing I've been talking about, not only this whole call, but every time I ever get started with this kind of thing. Every time I get into this, it's only to prove how we're exactly the same, how we're the same person and there's no differentiation. The holy point, one of the holy points for type 5 is holy transparency, which is a recognition that there is no separate individual, that we are all the same person. And that's what I saw that day when on January 1st, there was no other person. It was funny to me. Actually, I'll even tell you a step further. One of my family members was playing like Christian worship music, and it made me laugh because when he said, he is wonderful, he is powerful, whatever he was singing, whatever the lyrics were, I laughed and said, which one? Because to me, it was like trying to narrow it down to one person when in reality, that one person was everyone. And so I from this perspective, I couldn't recognize a difference. And it was funny, like, if someone starts talking about their opinion, I want to laugh and say, yeah, I'm sure the whole rest of the world would love to get together and listen to your specific opinion. Because to me, it was like, I don't know, it's really weird, but that's the one thing that I get really into when I start talking about it, is this fact that there is no separate individual and that we're all the same, and how that's helped me fix a lot of these relationship problems I've had in my life, like with my mom. That's something that, like, honestly, I didn't think I would fix until I was old. I didn't think I would be prepared for that until I was like an old man, or like until like my mom was like on her deathbed. I did not expect to fix it this soon, like to just make it dissolve. And that's what happened from knowing this truth, this having had this experience. It gave me what I needed to apply it to the rest of my life, and I've been learning from it ever since. So yeah, definitely, I agree. You could probably very easily notice what someone's Enneatype once was through their through their holy point.
Yeah, and with Trey's experience, and Trey, I'd love you to speak about this a little more. But it's interesting because when Trey first talked to me about this January 1st experience, he hadn't really dove into the spiritual dimension of the Enneagram book in quite some time, but he was trying to explain it to me, but he never really looked at the book, at least point 5, right?
Yeah.
And he was talking about how he saw from these eyes looking at him, eyes. And I was like, man, that sounds like, point 5 on Enneagram. And it just resonated with me, point 5. And he was talking about how he was seeing from different people's eyes.
Yeah.
And Trey, explain your experience, and then I'll pull up
the
book. Yeah. So talk about the eyes thing, and that's
I know what you're talking about. Okay, so basically, when I walked around, if I talk to you or if I talk to anybody, let's say you're on the couch, Damon, if you could fix the audio, it's echoing. Yeah, but if I look on the if I'm talking to you and you're sitting on a couch, when I speak to you, the couch is in the background, so it sort of disappears, right? I'm no longer paying attention to it, kind of fades, right? I'm speaking to you, so I see you. When I had this experience, it was almost as though when I looked at people, their bodies faded into the background and their eyes popped out. Like, this isn't what happened to me, but visually, this is how I'm going to describe it, okay? It was as though if I looked into someone else's pupils, I could almost rip through the very veil of reality. And on the other side was a blackness or a black void. And that's what I was looking at in someone's eyes. It felt as though the thing that gave you life, the thing that made you a spectator, was actually the thing that made us all a spectator. That void was behind all of us. And so in reality, we were just doing this big puppet show with ourselves. And so this physical existence was so flimsy and so irrelevant in comparison to this like huge void. But we found a way to play with our own life forms. It was interesting. It wasn't as though I could see through someone else's perspective, but I knew that I was there on the other side, that I was, when that person was looking at me, or when they were looking at that, or when they were doing this, that whatever they were spectating or whatever was happening with them was myself. And there was no difference. The only difference was the physical manifestation, the body allowing us to have that experience. And that if you were to rip away the body and the rest of reality, you would just have this void or this experience. So it was almost like the way I try to visually describe it, like a secondary way of describing it is if you had a giant carpet that was the entire world and you could see all of these people on this carpet. And if you imagine having like a black floor and you put this carpet on the black floor and you poke the eyes of the people out on the design of this carpet, it was as though when you looked at reality, it looked two-dimensional. And the thing that was a constant, the thing that felt more real than anything else was the floor beneath the carpet, the blackness that connected all of the people in the image. That's what it was like. It's pretty amazing. It was so funny to me. Like everything was so amusing. Like when anyone said anything, or it just, people would talk as though they were separate, and I would find that so amusing. I couldn't stop laughing about it. Actually, sorry, I want to add on to this. I actually made someone accidentally called me Tony. I have like 2 different Tonys in my family, and my name's Trey, but someone that had recently been married into the family said like, "Hey Tony," and then someone said, no, that's not Tony, that's Trey. And I was like, no, I'm Tony. And they were like, what? And I was like, yeah, and you're Tony too. And they were like, what? And I was like, yeah, if we were all Tony, there would be no problems because there's no differentiation. And so I said, for example, imagine this. Imagine my dad walks in and he says, I need a Tony to take out the trash. And then he leaves. Well, 2 hours later, the trash hasn't been taken out. So he comes back in What? Is he going to get mad? I was like, he's Tony too. Why didn't he do it? You're either blaming yourself in this situation, or you're blaming the whole rest of the world. Because if everyone's Tony, there's no one to blame besides the rest of the world or yourself, and both are stupid. Just take out the trash. Stop blaming. You see what I mean? It was like, that was what it was like. I actually wondered why we had separate names. Like in this state of mind, I didn't understand why we had different names. I was like, why don't we just start a new thing where we just name everyone the same thing? It was an interesting experience.
Yeah. So one thing before I finish the point I was saying, and I'm glad we were able to get to that, is that your metaphors are awesome. I wish I could do metaphors like that.
What, you mean like the carpet?
Yeah, all of them. I mean, as long as I've known you, you've been able to perfectly position the way that you're thinking in metaphors, where I've never really had that ability. I just talk about gruesome things. I like to make examples. I'm not really making metaphors. I make examples, but I take it to the gruesome level.
You're like, I burned my hand.
Yeah, like a bear chasing you down the woods, and I mean, it's not like deep at all. It's just gruesome, and you're like, an eye is like a prism being rotated on its axis.
No, I've actually said that before.
I know, I'm quoting you. And you're like, and it's like the light shining through it and the spectrum, and you're defining it so well. And I'm just like, yeah, NI is like getting slapped in the face by a big a big prison cellmate. You're sleeping in your bed at night and you think you're safe. Nope.
I use extreme examples too, but usually when I talk about morality.
Well, I mean, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, so the point is, what I was saying was that Trey started seeing all these things that he described. So I was like, man, that sounds like Enneagram 0.5. So I opened the book and I was like, wow, that is 0.5. It actually talked about how they're seeing from the different perspectives of people with like looking inside of their minds through their eyes and seeing everything else. And I think when Trey had his spiritual experience, he actually experienced the true nature of 5. And the interesting thing about that was that, or at least true nature as seen from 0.5, let me rephrase. And he was able to kind of experience that enlightenment moment, or that enlightenment experience. And he was able to see from that viewpoint, which is extremely fascinating because I'll tell you, I haven't had much enlightenment experiences, but my girlfriend who's had some enlightenment experiences, she sees from 0.7. It's pretty interesting. You can see.
What is like perfect? Isn't it like perfect arising of just the natural events?
Yeah, if you listen to how she speaks, she's like, just be in the moment, be present with it. That's like her focus.
Yeah.
It's very much about being present, where yours is about letting go because everything is all you anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there's different angles, but you're hitting at the same point overall.
Yeah.
That's what
it accomplishes the same result in a weird way.
Yeah. So that's what we were saying ultimately, is that you can see the true nature behind someone's Enneagram by seeing what they're seeing, how the true nature is from their specific vantage point.
Yeah.
And I think that's what makes it so fascinating.
Yeah. Actually, I think one of the things that also happened when I had that experience was when I tried to describe it to you, I think I also said, because this is the way I described it to my stepmom. If you imagine that we're all a thought in God's, like we're all in God's mind. If you imagine it that way, right? And one person is a thought, a expression of this personality, this ultimate personality. If that's the case, there's some things that you do throughout your day that you do that are, not the best decisions, or you're criticizing yourself or whatever. That's you not being in touch with yourself. So in a way, if you were completely in touch with yourself, then that would be one thought in God's mind. where he knew himself, right? So the entire purpose of existence would be for God to know himself. And that was something that I had drawn from my experience to explain it to her. And then when I explained it to you, you actually pulled it up in the Enneagram book and it literally said the same thing. And I was like, what the heck? It was super cool. But yeah, it's I actually, what's crazy, I didn't tell you this, I don't think, but something that I started doing now that I had that experience, like just recently, like yesterday or 2 days ago, I started doing this. I'll watch Netflix and I'll turn the volume down on Netflix to 0. And then I'll turn music on and I'll just watch people. Because it gets difficult to like to recognize that everybody is the same when nobody thinks they are. Because everyone in your environment is like saying, "Oh no, you think this about me," and they like get really into it. Now, if I were in my same state of mind, I'd start laughing about it. But in moments where I try to reconnect, it's really difficult when you hear these people talking. It's so much easier if there's no words. So I just watch people on Netflix just interacting with each other and going about their days, but I'm not hearing their opinions. I'm not trying to form my own. You see what I mean? There's nothing getting in the way of me just seeing them all as the same. And so it's interesting. So now I'm watching Netflix shows and I'm like 3 seasons in. I don't even know what's happening. but but it's been interesting. So
The it's interesting that you mentioned kind of that because I think there's a lot of people still mentioning Enneagram on here, but I do want to share something with a few people out of this book. It's called The Facets of Unity. It's actually my favorite Enneagram book. And here's why, just so you guys know. Because in order to understand Enneagram type, I think it's critical that you understand how the type is actually formed, right? Types are all nerds. Well, no, they're compensating for a particular thing. And in order to understand that, you have to understand the holy idea behind each type. So
yeah.
as we break down into the holy ideas, I'm looking for the specific page here, but it talks about how the instinctual center is a description of true nature, and the head center is the human experience of true nature, and the image center is actually the embodiment of true nature, or the image we try to replicate. And I'm going to pull up the exact diagram here if I can find it, but it's actually really cool because here it is. How we function is the image center. So I stand a little corrected here, but I'm going to pull it up now. I'm going to share the screen. No monkey this time. Okay, so as you can see here, let's do present to everyone. All right, so as you can see here, it says that view the totality of reality. So 8, 9, and 1 are all looking at reality. They're not really thinking about the human experience in reality, whereas 7, 6, and 5 are all looking at the humanity as they're looking at the human experience in reality, and then 2, 3, 4 are looking at functioning in reality. So when you see these people talk from different centers, what you're going to find is people talking about totality, what reality actually is. There's people who are talking about the human experience in reality, as Trey's focused on is we are all the same, and we're all experiencing the same thing. And then you can see the functioning of reality from people who are natural image center types.
Wow,
So,
that's interesting.
Yeah, that's
Sense.
what's really cool about looking at some of this stuff. You can find that people are saying, you can see that kind of coming out in language after a certain point. You're like, oh, I can see what this person's where's this focused at. And if you're a tri-type enthusiast, you'll kind of see a mixture of a little bit of both, but the core type is usually how the whole thing. It's the foundation of it sitting at the bottom. Like,
Right.
I'm making this point about the totality, and I'm making this point about the functioning, but ultimately because of this person, or I'm going to use I in this example in the head center, then I'm going to have this is the big point I'm trying to make, and I'll use all these other points to support it. And so you'll find 8, 9s, and 1s who are core usually are probably going to be the people who write about what reality actually is, right? Whereas the people who wrote the Bible will probably be image center types. And the reason being is because they they are actually trying to depict how you should function in reality. Creating doctrine. Here's how you should function. Here's how you should be. Here's how you should act. Right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
this you can see those religious texts, a lot of that.
That's why.
And
that's why.
whereas,
sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead. No, I want to hear your point. Yeah.
I was just gonna say that's probably why I tried saying that we should not have separate names, because it's the humanity in relation to reality.
Right.
You see what I mean?
Yeah. And this is what's fascinating about it all. Is just you can really pay close attention to see how this actually unfolds in people's language and kind of what they're focused on and what is reality in itself, and the totality of it, and ultimately it's really wanting to be able to see everything. And you're speaking from an experience. So when you hear different writers might maybe seemingly contradict themselves about certain things, it's just they're looking at the same thing from different vantage points, and you realize that it's all true. Right? You're just like, oh wow, okay, I see. So boiling it down to really looking at these different perspectives and getting into Enneagram, it's really more importantly about understanding these holy ideas, because if you lose, if we keep it general, let's say 3 centers, right? You're in 1 of 3. If you lose perspective with the totality of reality, you want to create your own reality. 9s, they merge their reality with others. 8s force their own reality on the worlds, and 1s internalize their reality by making it perfect. Simple, right? That's the concept behind it in the different centers, and it's just call him Tony.
Yeah, everyone's Tony.
When I think of Tony, I think of 2 things. I think of Frosted Flakes and Tony Robbins.
Oh,
that's it.
You know what I always think of, like, when it comes to Tony? I think of this moment where if anyone gets upset, anybody, the cop out could always be, it was fucking Tony. Fucking Tony did it.
Yeah, well, you know what? Tony is now God, because Tony is omniscient, omnipresent.
Yeah, exactly. Everything.
God's real name is Tony.
Yeah, blame Tony if you're gonna blame anybody.
I think someone asked if we were religious earlier. Are you guys religious? I think someone asked that. Religious is not the word I would use. I would use definitely spiritual enthusiast, but religious.
I would say philosophical.
Yeah, Trey's more. I'm going to say spiritual enthusiast, because philosophical covers it. Philosophy covers the study of life, meaning of life. So we'll just say philosophical.
I mean, the thing is, like, when I look at Christianity now, having had my experience, having had studied a little bit about Buddhism and Hinduism, etc., I see how it's the exact same. Like, to me, I look at the two and I'm like, this actually is talking about the same thing at the core. But the thing is, Christianity has so much religion and it has so much, okay, well, we do this and this is right and this is wrong, and too many rules, right? And so that's when things change and you start to see a big difference between the two. But the core truths, at least from what I can see, have always been the same, right? I mean, if they say that Jesus is love, right? Well, in your mind, a lot of the times the reason you have these barriers in your mind is due to a lack of love, right? You're suffering, and what you're attempting to do is ease your suffering by coming up with all these mental constructs and these different ego strategies, right? So the idea of inviting Jesus into your heart is allowing a presence of love to now direct your actions and to tear down your walls, right? So, and honestly, I've heard Eckhart Tolle say things like the light of consciousness. And it's interesting because when I was in my experience on the first, it was there were moments where I'd start to feel myself slipping away, and then I would hone in on whatever it was that was making me slip away, and I would ask myself the truth of the situation, and then I'd laugh because I'd be like, oh well, it was Tony, you know what I mean, or something like that. And so and so it's interesting. It's almost as though as long as you give each thought that brings you down the attention required, you're actually making that thought conscious, in the sense that you're bringing your consciousness, your conscious attention to it, right? So in the way, you could call that the light of Christ, right? Call that the love of Christ. You could step into the light. This is where the duality of evil or of good and evil is in Christianity. You eat of the fruit of the knowledge of good and evil, and that literally creates a duality within you, where you have these parts of your mind that have not been seen by your consciousness, and these parts of your mind that are in consciousness. So when I read this stuff, like, I see the core, like, really important things, like, as aligning with, even psychology, as well as, going into Buddhism and Hinduism, etc. But, like, the religion, the rules, and just the rules, really, and the practices, that's where you start to get into stuff that's kind of like, it starts to divide them. It starts to make them very, very different. But at the core, I think they're talking about the same thing.
Yeah, I think that if you look at like old Taoist text, you can kind of see, like, even let's say Lao Tzu, right? Who responsible for the the Tao Te Ching, right? And if you really look into this particular writing, it's an attempt to humorously describe reality. And it's interesting because you see the glimpses of the other things, but it's what the Tao is and what it's not. It's everything and nothing, right? So you can see how religion is tough, because you're forcing yourself into a 2, 3, and 4 category almost, and it can be tough for a lot of people because
I see what you mean.
Yeah, you're forcing yourself in how you should function. I've never really concerned myself with how I should function as far as that's concerned. Whereas type 3, which is a part of my tri-type, it's prominent in my personality, is less related to that. The how I should be, though. And again, it really is just based on your own interpretation, your upbringing, your cultural background. But I think religion can serve as a divisor. But based on what my point was, based on kind of where you come from, the Chinese culture, the Western culture, or religious background, they're all getting at the same thing. Much like people see reality in a different vantage point, so do these different religions. Because what you can do is you can strip away all the doctrine, and you can still find that core fundamental truth. And then you can find actually how they're very connected. They're very similar.
Oh, yeah.
So that's really helpful for a lot of people, because they say, okay, like, I consider myself a Christian, but I also consider myself a Taoist. I also consider myself a Buddhist.
Yeah.
I also consider myself, so, it's like I'm not any of those things, and I know that. And they're just labels.
Yeah.
And it's like I don't really need the label. I don't feel attached to the label. So some people say that to have salvation. Okay, and we're all obsessed with. I think it's a little. I think it's a little funny that we become so enamored with this concept of salvation that we actually start running away from it in our own way. And it makes me laugh. I just see so much. I see so much, and it's like I see this happening. It's a trap that people set up for themselves. And even Enneagram, if you look in the back of this book, it's Spiritual Dimension of the Enneagram, you can see in the back that there is a diagrams, right, on what the traps are. So
yeah, those are great.
Yeah, the Enneagram of
self-hiding is mine.
Yeah, so the Enneagram 5's trap is observing.
Oh, right? Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, so the Enneagram of traps is what they actually think is the way to get out, and it's actually the way to go deeper in it, right? So the Enneagram
into the lie.
Yeah, deeper into the lie.
Yeah, which means I have to be more involved, right?
Yeah, whereas the Enneagram avoidances, obviously that's a little self-explanatory. It's like that's what you're trying to avoid, and that's what your delusion is reacting to, avoiding that. And the anti-self actions is actually what you identify with and things that drive you to create a bigger ego. So, like 5 is self-hiding. That's what you're talking about, is anti-self.
Yeah.
And so what I believe, and I haven't studied 5 in super detail, but for a little more background on this, but when it comes to type 5, I'm this is funny. We both have the book, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So when it comes to type 5, self-hiding, my assumption is, and you can tell me kind of maybe how you've experienced it. So, but when it comes to type 5, I'm assuming what it means is that you're pulling, you're hiding your true self, and you're actually hiding behind a wall of knowledge. Instead of allowing yourself to actually be, you're hiding it behind knowledge.
Yeah. No, that's actually something I've been thinking about recently, because I've gotten to this point where like I'm like, all right, I'm trying to remove myself, right? Like I'm trying to reintegrate with Tony, right? And what's almost frustrating about it is that when I realized that I need to just be myself and get frustrated about things and like get involved, etc., like I didn't know what my freaking opinion was, because I was like, all I know is the things I've researched. Like when I wanted to take a standpoint, my reference has always been well, the ambivalence of everything, the all the things that I know. And it was like I was searching myself, like, what do I want? And I was like, fuck. It's like I didn't know. And so yeah, I could definitely see hiding behind all that knowledge is what that means.
Yeah, and that's what my assumption is for 5. And we have these diagrams really help define that type. You have the Enneagram of lies. These are the things that they tell themselves. This is their, in a sense, the filter, the way they see the world, and they tell themselves, or they strive for those particular things. And I think knowing these diagrams really well really helps you get a good perspective on each type. And I think that really helps formulate what. And I think it's better to do this than just read type descriptions, because they're not going to get you the answers you're looking for with type descriptions. I mean, I just found out who Tony actually is.
Who's Tony? That's a crazy question. There is no other but Tony.
Question. I actually got a picture of him.
Okay. That's him. That's freaking Tony, man. It's out to get you.
And that's Tony. So it really does have a way of circling back around.
See, you could be happy like Tony.
Yeah, I mean, Tony, his life is really simple.
All you have to accept is that you've forgotten who you are, and that in reality, you've been Tony the whole time.
Yeah. I mean, we all try to move away from Tony, but in reality, we are Tony.
Yeah.
So, there's Tony is a capuchin monkey. Yes.
What?
Oh, somebody said Tony is a capuchin monkey.
Yeah. If you put every human being together, you get the image of a capuchin.
That probably would be pretty accurate.
I mean, I think it's something we should genuinely consider.
Yeah, I think there's visual effects designers now. They can take a sample size of every, person from every country and blend them together, and you wonder what that face would kind of look like. So, but I think again, outside of summarizing everything that we've talked about in this video is really boiling it down to using these tools to understand ourselves and understand others, but not enough to where we understand it so deeply that we start becoming obsessed and categorizing ourselves and categorizing others and discriminating against others. Maybe thinking beginning of a journey is helpful, and then you realize that you're not actually that type, and that's okay. Why did you feel it? Why do you need to feel like it's your place to tell somebody what type they are? Like, I still don't understand that methodology. Somebody wants to identify as a monkey, then just let them be a monkey. I mean, these are the same people who are going around saying stuff like, gender identity is great. You can identify with any gender. And then they're saying, well, you can't identify with INFJ. Well, if you want to be a freaking INFJ today, just be it.
Yeah.
Whatever. I'm not going to get all caught up in my panties in a twist because somebody thinks they're a ENTJ or INFJ
or a frog.
Right. You can be whatever you want.
I personally, from my perspective, you look like a human being. But if you think you're a frog, that's chill.
Yeah. You can identify with a frog. It's all over. You can identify with whatever you want to identify with.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think it's like, I don't even care. Like, whatever you want to do. Now, if you always could ask my opinion, and I'll give you, hey, if you can get my opinion if you're confused. I'll give you a shot. I can't promise that I know you that well.
Yeah.
So I think that's I'll do what I can. I can type you off this Voltology system that talks about like micro expressions, like, based on this is kind of what I'm getting from you. But even that system says that you need to look at many different interactions, because a person's going to act different, probably around somebody they're really uncomfortable with versus somebody that they're comfortable with.
Yeah.
In interviews, some people have stage fright. They're terrified, and there's like a video camera or whatever, and they're like, oh my God. And they clam, well, that person's introverted. So I don't know. It's just there's too many complexities, and we can't be so arrogant to think that we can just get to understanding all those things so quickly.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's out of the question. And my whole point is it doesn't even matter. Like I said, I'm still fascinated by psychology and typology, but me and everybody that is getting all caught up into who's what and what's who, it doesn't really matter. I mean, here we are talking about how we can move as a culture together and hopefully achieve some higher level of spiritual awareness and treat each other a little more kindly, versus being so hard on each other, because we all have very tough journeys. It's easy for anyone. And so I think that's the take home from all this, is really just to experience together and work harder together and be part of this journey together, be supportive of people struggling. Now, by no means does this mean that you need to be there, and by no means does this mean that you actually need to let someone play victim, because that's not loving either. I was talking to somebody, I don't remember who it was, talking to somebody about, true love is calling, Trey's mocking, to a higher place is true love, and expecting more from them, not in the sense you hold them to this high standard, but trying to get the best out of them. That is true. Somebody to be what they're worth, and be more closer to happiness. For example, it's really hard to love someone like me, because my happiness is tied up in things like becoming the best person I could be. And when I fall short of that, like I feel like I'm not reaching my potential. So the people who are around me, typically they want to call me to that higher place, because they know that's what's going to make me happy. And it's hard for me to hear that, because I'm aware of what I did, and I'm almost like, oh shit, I need to not do that. So I think that's what my definition of true love is, though. It's not acceptance. I want somebody to love me and accept me for who I am. If you do that to me, you're going to strangle me. You're going to kill me. I think it's accept me for who I am. Yeah. I mean, come on.
Yeah. You know what I would do? There was this, in the past, there were like, a few relationships that I had been in. And this girl, I started noticing, this is so common with girls my age. It's the most annoying thing in the world. They start structuring their sentences as a way to get me to say something good about them. Like, and so I noticed this, and I can see that they have like a lacking, like a feeling that they're lacking, right? So what I started doing was I would give them the love when they weren't asking for it, basically, when they weren't trying to set it up. I would give them the appreciation. And the moment that they started to try to like get me to say something good about them, I would say something bad about them instead. I would completely mess up their whole scheme. And I was hoping that they would notice that they don't have to do anything extra to get that recognition or to get that appreciation, and that just existing in a regular state is how I'm going to appreciate them, you know. And so, oh, great. Yeah, actually, there was a guy at work. This guy, I trained him at work, and he goes, "Trey, how old are you?" And I was like, "How old do you think I am?" He was like, 27. And I was like, "Thank you." I was like, "No, I'm not."
Yeah, the everybody thinks you know, it's funny because I didn't start looking like closer to my age. I probably still don't look my age, but when I would shave all this off, and everybody was like, I mean, I was 25 years old, and people were like, "Man, so when, what are you going to school for?" And I'm like, "Dude, I'm way out of school. What are you talking about? I've done all that." You know, they're like,
Man,
I just had such a young face. I
yeah.
just was like, I had the youngest face for a long time. Everybody's like, "Man, you look like a little baby," and I'm like 26, and I'm like, "Yeah, damn near 30."
Wow.
Yeah, so I mean, some people, Trey, some people think you're older because you're how philosophical you are, but then they look at you and they're like, "Man, you look like a kid." Like, so they're confused. So they guess right in the middle. They're like 25. They're like
I get
25,
23 the
26.
most often. And then I'm like, "No, I'm actually 19." And they're like,
So for the audience, do you want the audience to know how old you actually are? You're
"Yeah,
trying to
I
go
just
ahead.
said it."
You said 19.
Yeah, I'm about to turn 20.
Yeah. So that's the
Whoa.
answer, people. He's about to turn 20.
It's a
Yeah.
big deal because my number changed, you know?
Yeah, your number changed.
Yeah.
Your numbers. And you know, I don't know if anybody on the watching this video knows anything about numerology, but it's another area I try to know a little bit about because I don't know enough about it. Trey knows about as much as I do, which probably isn't much, right?
A
Trey,
lot.
did you look into it at all?
I looked at my chart and stuff, and it's pretty interesting. Yeah. I mean, you know, yeah. I mean, it's pretty interesting. That's all I really gotta say.
Mhm. Yeah. So, all right, guys. So we're gonna pop off this video. I think now we've been on here for two and a half hours. So
Felt like a while.
yeah. So we're gonna pop off this video, but Slack is always open for everyone and anyone. The idea is to keep it running, keep it fun, keep it light, keep it humorous and educational. Um, so I monitor Slack quite a bit. I'm not always on there, and I don't reply to billions of direct messages in one day. But I am on there, and if you post a question in there and it's directed at me, I might be able to get back to you. I hope that though you do interact with each other as you've done on this live chat. It always makes me feel good to be able to provide a flat platform for you guys to interact with each other and share ideas, because your ideas are a lot better than mine. Because at the end of the day, I don't know shit. You know,
Yeah. We had
that's
some pretty good conversations on Slack. I definitely recommend joining.
yeah. There's so much to discuss outside of typology, outside of everything else. There's a lot. There's a lot to discuss. I mean, you got spirituality, you got astrology, you got human design, which I don't know much about. It's pretty cool though. Uh, Kind of combines astrology with the meridians and the body's energy
Talking
pathways.
about like the pyramid, like upside down, and
Yeah, all that weird shit in the
yeah,
body, and you
yeah,
got a
that's
pyramid
interesting.
here. I thought that was pretty cool.
Akaba.
Yeah, and then you got the obviously Enneagram, my favorite. Um, and the rest of the stuff. But yeah, I mean, you got all kinds of things you can discuss. I mean, there's all kinds of options to things that help. Try to do yourself a favor and not become so attached to the type. Become more attached to creating long-lasting relationships with people, sharing ideas, and being supportive of people, but by no means supporting people being victims. Call people to a higher place. Do what you can to really get people to progress and challenge people sometimes, really test them. And some people will get defensive. Just know that's an ego reaction to what you're saying. I don't know if any of these systems have a lot of truth or any truth at all. It's just another way to help understand yourself and how you interact with others. But remember, at the end of the day, it's all about moving closer to Tony.
Yeah.
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 And Tony is
with Tony.
Yeah, Tony is a capuchin. And remember that too, because that's critical. And there's the other aspect is no longer don't say God damn it, just say Tony damn it. Yeah.
He's at it again, guys. He's always stirring the pot.
Yeah, just say
Literally.
Tony damn it. Or you just say Tony Christ. Yeah, so everybody just take your path, move closer to Tony, be connected, hold your hand, and let Tony guide you.
I got one more thing.
Yeah.
Okay. So this is something that I have always wanted, like I do a lot, is I look at people and I wonder to myself, if I run up to that person and I just start interrogating them, am I going to find out that they're just an extra in a movie? You know what I mean? And that really they have no life. And there's no story there. So I challenge all of you to do that to at least 5 people this week. Run up to some random stranger and find out if they actually exist or if that was just some random person walking the street, and tell me what you find out.
And on another ending note is just know that the life you experience is a hologram.
Oh yeah.
And the Trey that I'm speaking to doesn't actually exist, but the real Trey is speaking to me when I don't actually exist. So just know that the real Trey is speaking to a hologram, just like I'm speaking to a hologram today.
This reality only exists as it does in my mind.
Yeah. And this is why we all live in this holographic universe. And so, and then, when I was a kid, I always wondered, I said, I think I'm the only one seeing from my eyes. I'm the only one seeing with eyes. I think I'm the only one that sees in my life.
You really like that holographic theory, don't you?
Yeah, it's cool. But it's more of the fact that I think I'm the only one that sees in my life. And I think everyone else is like, they don't see. But in their lives, they see, and I'm just a node.
I see what you mean. Dude.
Yeah. I'm just...
Okay, I'm sorry. You got me like really into that idea, and it's time to close. So
yeah, I'm just a node. Anyway, I'm gonna watch some crazy VR movie probably. And
you have a headset?
Huh?
You have a headset?
I don't have a headset. I just close my eyes.
Oh.
All right, guys. Thanks for joining. Get on Slack. Have some fun, enjoy yourselves, and we'll see you next time.
Peace.
Capuchin.